Chapter 1609. Zhang Yan did not intend to kill the enemy with a single strike. His goal was only to delay Yang Yugong and the others in the formation. It should be known that he was not the only one in the formation. As long as they unleashed their full power, it would not be difficult to deal with the remaining people. Ao Shao transmitted his voice, "Everyone, the heaven and earth gate will not be sealed for long. We can lend fellow Zhang a helping hand. Don't let this person escape." The few heaven masters understood the situation. They knew that this was the best time to eliminate the enemy. They all channeled their magic power and activated their fixed hold supernatural power. They were experienced in battle. They knew that there was no need for them to use any powerful techniques. They only needed to immobilize Yang Yugong and the others so that they could not escape. Yang Yugong and the others felt their bodies shake, and they seemed to be enveloped by layer upon layer of pressure, causing them to be unable to move any longer. They immediately knew that they'd been struck by the immobilizing divine ability. If it was earlier, they only had to circulate their magic power slightly to struggle free. But now, they had to face the enormous hand that was pressing down towards them, so they didn't have the time to do all of this. They hurriedly withdrew all their defensive magic artifacts, and numerous protective glows appeared around their avatars. The huge hand seemed to be descending slowly. However, it only took a moment for it to reach the top of their heads. It came crashing down mercilessly. Boom! A loud crash that sounded like the shattering of heaven and earth could be heard. The remaining force caused the already dilapidated land below to completely collapse. The old Taoist of distant enlightenment heaven had the lowest cultivation among these people. He had just entered the first stage of the crossing perception realm not long ago. It was not easy for him to be able to fight from the beginning until now. He had almost used up all the protective treasures he had brought. At this moment, he was the first to be unable to bear it. Under the irresistible force, the treasure light on his body suddenly shattered. Because he was bound by the fixed technique, he had nowhere to run, so he could only move his body and avoid it. Zhang Yan, who was in the sky, immediately sensed something. He glanced over, and in an instant, he found where this person had fallen. In the next moment, countless bolts of lightning exploded on his body. The latter had no strength to resist and was instantly scattered into a huge cloud of clear air. Just as he was about to reform, the lightning swept over like a flood, repeatedly wearing away at his vitality. In just a few breaths of time, his vitality was exhausted and he died on the spot. After killing this person, Zhang Yan did not look at him again. He activated his transcendence energy and the 5 fingers of the huge hand slowly closed. It was as if he wanted to crush everyone in his palm. When Ao Shao and the others saw this, they transmitted a few words to each other and used all their strength to maintain the fixed hold technique. They did not give their opponent any chance to escape. On the other hand, Yang Yugong and the others felt a strong sense of danger. At this moment, they were under pressure from 2 sides. At this moment, the best thing to do was to move his body and avoid the attack. This way, they would be able to escape immediately. However, they had seen Zhu Yu and Luo Shu's fates. It was not difficult for them to deduce that Zhang Yan had the ability to predict a cultivator's body in an instant. Therefore, none of them dared to do so. They could only rely on their transcendence energy to forcibly hold on. Heavenly Lord Huan immediately circulated his divine decree and disappeared. He said to the others, "Fellow Taoists, this Taoist Zhang's transcendence energy is tyrannical. He is almost on par with a 4th tribulation cultivator. Now that Ao Shao and the others are holding him back, we are completely powerless to fight back. If we are trapped here, we will definitely not be able to escape. The only thing we can do now is to split up and flee." The moment he said this, everyone fell silent. If they did that, it would be equivalent to admitting that they had lost this battle. In reality, they had used all their techniques and lost all their external help. They indeed had no hope of winning. Yang Yugong pondered for a long time before he said in a deep voice, "Let's do it this way. Fellow Taoists, no matter who is able to escape, I hope that you can take care of your respective sects if possible. He paused for a moment before he said, I am someone that the other side must eliminate. In a while, I will break through the fixed hold technique and escape. I will attract this person to chase after me, and all of you can find an opportunity to escape. Heavenly Lord Huan immediately said, Alright, let's do it this way. Talking here is also exhausting my divine decree. Fellow Taoists, let's save some energy to deal with the enemies outside. Han Su and Heavenly Lord Huan did not speak, but it was obvious that they had tacitly agreed to this method. Yang Yugong did not say anything else and withdrew his divine decree. Although he had said all sorts of things in the fixed hold technique, it only lasted for a moment outside. When he saw that the giant hand was about to close, he spun the root fruit and at the same time, took out a talisman and shone it in the air. His entire body turned into a stream of clear air and escaped into the sky. Even though Ao Shao and the others tried their best to stop him, none of them were able to stop him. Zhang Yan took a glance and immediately guessed what this person was up to. However, after he figured out the origin of this person, he ignored him and continued to stare at the remaining three people. Ao Shao, on the other hand, frowned. Yang Yugong was undoubtedly the most important person among these people. Not only was he the leader of the resistance against Green Jade Palace, but he was also a cultivator who had undergone the fourth tribulation of enlightenment. There were few heavenly lords who could fight against him. If this person escaped, Yu Huan would not be able to live in peace in the future. Those who participated in the siege today would definitely be on the list of people who would be targeted by him. After considering all these, he transmitted a message using his divine decree. Leave Yang Yugong to me. I will leave the rest to all of you. After he finished speaking, he turned into a stream of clear air and chased after the fleeing light. Heavenly Lord Huan and the others saw that Yang Yugong's departure didn't draw Zhang Yan's attention, so they knew that they couldn't delay any longer. They all activated their root fruits in unison to evade the Transcendence energy lock and fled in different directions. As for who would be able to escape in the end and who would be left behind, it would depend on their own luck. Zhang Yan first looked at Heavenly Lord Huan. After a while, his eyes flashed and a sword light flew over and pierced through Heavenly Lord Huan's body. Heavenly Lord Huan paused for a moment. After a while, his body gradually shattered into countless pieces like broken glass. In the end, he swallowed a mysterious hole and became the second person to follow in his footsteps. However, his delay gave Han Su and Heavenly Lord Huan an opportunity to escape. Both of them flew with all their might and disappeared into the horizon in an instant. When Heavenly Lord Jian and the others saw that victory was right in front of them, how could they let them go? They split up and chased after them. Zhang Yan changed his mind. Without him interfering, Heavenly Lord Jian and the others were more than enough to deal with Heavenly Lord Jian and the others. On the other hand, there was only Ao Shao at Yang Yugong's side. He might not be able to kill Ao Shao. When he thought of this, he sensed where Ao Shao's aura was and tore through the void to arrive at Ao Shao's location. Ao Shao had already caught up to Yang Yugong and was fighting with him. However, his main goal was to stall for time. When he saw Zhang Yan rushing over, he took a step back and said, Heavenly Lord Yang, you have lost your momentum. Seeing that it's not easy for you to cultivate, if you surrender now, I can discuss with Elder Peng and spare your life. What do you think? Yang Yugong sighed. Just now, he had only revealed his true strength, but he had already discovered that his landing spot had already been predicted by someone else. At this moment, he had no chance of victory even if he faced Zhang Yan alone. Moreover, Ao Shao was also here. There was indeed no need for him to fight anymore. He shook his head and said, There's no need. I'm useless and have implicated my fellow Taoists behind me. I have to give them an explanation eventually. It's a pity that after this battle, the Yuhuan heavens will fall into the hands of the Green Jade Palace. The people of the world can only follow the rules and rely on karma to survive. I'm afraid that there will be few who can transcend in this world. After he finished speaking, he bowed to the two of them and sat down cross-legged. Then, he pointed a finger at the space between his eyebrows and severed his own chi activity. Traces of cracks spread from his forehead to various parts, and then they shattered piece by piece. In the end, everything was swallowed by the profound hole that had suddenly opened up. Ao Shao looked at the scene and said, "Once this person is dead, the rest of the people will no longer be fated." Zhang Yan nodded slightly. At this moment, he sensed that 2 auras had disappeared one after the other. He smiled and said, "It seems like the matter has been settled. We should go back." In the deepest part of the inner Calamity Cave in the Chiwang Heavens, a beautiful woman with a graceful figure was lying on a crystal bed. This was the mortal body that Han Su had shed during her cultivation journey. However, at this moment, her body emitted a bright fluorescent light. Her eyelids moved a few times and then she opened her eyes. She looked up and her eyes gradually focused. After taking in a few deep breaths of spiritual vigor, she slowly sat up and sighed. "I still lost." She had cultivated the grand innocent heavenly maiden body, which was also a secret technique with a strong background. Even if her Dharma body was destroyed, as long as she still had her Dharma power seed and her body that had entered the path was not destroyed, she would not really die. She could still continue to exist. However, her Dharma power would be gone. Footsteps could be heard from outside. Then, the stone door was pushed open and Han Xiaorua hurried in. She asked anxiously, "Mother, what happened? Why did you abandon your Dharma body?" Han Su held her forehead and said, "It seems like I have calculated wrongly. Yang Yugong and the others will definitely lose. It seems like I can't stay in the Yuhuan heavens any longer." Han Xiaorua's face turned pale and she said with a trembling voice, "Heaven Master Yang and the others have lost? But that person from the Green Jade Palace?" Han Su shook her head and said, "Don't think too much. If that person is still here, how can I come back?" At this point, she sighed. "It's that Taoist Zhang. I didn't expect him to have such supernatural power." She raised her head and her expression became serious. "Once he is done with Yang Yugong and the others, he will definitely not let Chiwang Heaven go. Now that I have lost all my Dharma power, go pack up and prepare to leave this place quickly." Han Xiaorua also knew that the matter was unusually serious. She calmed herself and said, "Then, Mother, where should we go?" Han Su pondered for a while and sighed faintly. She said, "Now, we can only go to your father's place. However, I have not been in contact with him for tens of thousands of years. I don't know if he is still in that world." Han Xiaorua did not know much about her father and it was not convenient for her to ask too much. She said, "I will go prepare now." Han Su suddenly thought of something and called out to her, "Wait, there might be spies from Green Jade Palace in Chiwang Heaven. You must remember to be careful. Other than the servant in the cave, no one can be trusted." Han Xiaorua said, "Yes, I understand." Chapter 16:10. On the Green Jade Palace ship, the cultivators who came to conquer Wujue Heaven had already returned from Wujue Heaven. Mei Ruoqing descended from the sky and stopped on the ship's platform. She looked into Wujue Heaven and was still in disbelief. She had thought that even if they won the battle, they would have to pay a heavy price. She was even prepared to die. She did not expect that they would be able to win the battle. Not only that, but Yang Yugong and the others had not escaped. This meant that there was no one in the all heavens who could fight against the Green Jade Palace. The reason why they could do this was undoubtedly because of Zhang Yan. It was hard to imagine that there was a cultivator who could cultivate his mana to such a powerful level without entering enlightenment. She looked around and saw He Xianin standing on a high platform on the ship. She walked over and bowed, "Jinren He, sorry to disturb you. I have something to ask." He Xianin returned the greeting and said, "What would you like to know, Goddess Mei?" Mei Ruoqing said, "I've long heard of the lotus root grass in Xianhong Heaven. However, since your world and Green Jade Palace became enemies, you can no longer find it in the Golden Hall of Imperial Edict. I have a disciple who has recently reached the threshold of cultivation and is rebuilding a cave abode. He happens to need this treasure. Do you still have it in your world?" In the Yuhuan heavens, because of the abundance of spiritual opportunity, almost every world had its own unique precious medicine. Not only could it be exchanged for karma points, but it could also be used to exchange with other heavens for cultivation items. There were many good items in Xianhong heaven, among which the lotus root grass was the most famous. It was a spiritual herb planted around the cave abode of dark stone. It had the effect of gathering spiritual energy and was rare in the Yuhuan heavens. The spiritual vigor of the world was constantly dispersing. It was just a matter of how much spiritual vigor was dissipating. The formation might be able to slow it down, but the operation of the formation required spiritual vigor as well. However, this herb was able to lock in the spiritual vigor for a long time without dissipating. The loss of spiritual vigor was negligible and it was very mysterious. It was highly respected by the cultivators of the 19 heavens. However, there were not many of them. After hearing that Mei Ruoqing needed the item, He Xianyin pondered for a moment before replying, "I will inform Zhang Shengzhen about this matter. Regardless of the outcome, I will inform Heavenly Lord Mei." Mei Ruoqing smiled and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist He." Although she appeared to be here for the Lu Zhen grass, she actually did not think much of it. A mere disciple was not worthy of her doing this. The reason why she took the initiative to talk to Xian Hengtian was just to use this as an excuse to build a relationship with Xian Hengtian. At this moment, the deacon Taoist who sat in front of Elder Peng walked out of the spiritual boat and stood in front of them. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Why are you two still here? Elder Peng has already set up a banquet in the palace." Mei Ruoqing and He Xianyin didn't stay any longer. They politely greeted each other and walked into the hall. Not long after the two of them entered the hall, another 2 rays of light came from the outside and slowly landed in front of the hall. It was Zhang Yan and Ao Shao who had returned from outside. The Taoist attendant quickly came forward and said, "The two of you have returned. Elder Peng is already waiting for you in the hall." Zhang Yan smiled and entered the hall with Ao Shao. After greeting everyone, they sat down in their respective seats. Seeing that everyone was present, Elder Peng greeted them and music started playing. Then, he raised his cup and invited them to drink. After 3 drinks, he sat down. At this moment, he looked at Zhang Yan and cupped his hands. He said, "Fellow Taoist, you have contributed greatly to us being able to take down Yang Yugong and the others so easily." Zhang Yan said with a smile, "Elder Peng is exaggerating. If it weren't for everyone here, I wouldn't have been able to do anything." At this moment, Ao Shao said, "I'm afraid all of you don't know this. When I came back, I talked to spiritual master Zhang. Just now, I know that Lord Zhongling, the sect master of the Jindi sect, has an extraordinary background. He once followed the great underworld patriarch and lived in seclusion for millions of years. His magic power is unfathomable. This demon was used by Yang Yugong to help him. If he had charged into the formation while we were fighting, it would have been hard to predict the outcome of the battle. Fortunately, he was defeated by fellow Taoist Zhang." When the heavenly lords heard about Lord Zhongling's background, their hearts trembled. Previously, when Zhang Yan mentioned this demon, they did not underestimate him. However, they did not expect him to have such a powerful background. If they did not take precautions beforehand, they might not necessarily be able to stop him, but a few of them might have died. When they thought of this, they secretly felt relieved. For example, the Heavenly Lord and the others raised their cups to toast Zhang Yan from afar. However, most of them were not only toasting him for his strength but also for his powerful magic power. After all, the scene of him killing the Enlightenment embellishment in an instant was truly awe-inspiring. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and raised his cup to return the toast. However, he did not feel that defeating Lord Zhongling was a big deal. Putting aside his strong foundation, he was now on the path to the true Yang realm. Ordinary third-stage cultivators could not be compared to him at all. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were worlds apart. It was only natural that he could defeat that demon and the Enlightenment embellishment. If he still could not deal with this demon, then he would have wasted so many years of cultivation. At this moment, Elder Peng looked at Mei Ruoqing and said, Heavenly Lord Mei, I remember that you mentioned that the realm is slightly unstable. It seems that some people have been incited by Yang Yugong and the others. Do you need our help? Mei Ruoqing smiled and said, Thank you for your concern, Elder Peng. Before I came here, there were indeed many different opinions in the realm. However, after this battle, I believe there will be no more opinions. Elder Peng nodded and said, That's good. Although Yang Yugong and the others were eliminated, there were still remnants of their forces in Juyuan Heaven and other realms. However, there was no need for almighty cultivators like enlightenment embellishment to help. Therefore, after the banquet ended, the heavenly lords did not linger and left one by one. Zhang Yan was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he came to the top of the boat with Elder Peng and said, Elder Peng, now that the situation has been settled, even if there is a small storm, it will not be a problem for the heavenly lords of Green Jade Palace. I have been out for a long time and will have to return to the sect soon. Only spiritual master he is guarding Xianhong Heaven, so I will have to trouble you to take care of him. Outside Xianhong Heaven, there was a great formation protecting it. Normally, it would not be afraid of external enemies. However, he did not know when he would return to the universal heavens, so he greeted Elder Peng. Elder Peng said, Rest assured, as long as I am here, Xianhong Heaven will be fine. Zhang Yan thanked him and after saying a few more words, he bid farewell to Elder Peng and brought He Xianin back to Xianhong Heaven. Elder Peng watched him leave and looked into the void, stroking his beard and not saying a word. At this moment, Feng Lan walked up and said, Elder Peng, do you think that if Elder Zhang really obtains the Xian stone, he can cultivate to the level of the palace head? Elder Peng shook his head and said, Since Palace Head Yu Huan established the sect in the universal heavens, no one in Green Jade Palace has received the teachings. How would I know all this? Feng Lan said, What if spiritual master Zhang really succeeds? Elder Peng laughed and said, I know what spiritual master Feng means. However, when that time comes, it is something Palace Head should consider. What can we do? He walked into the hall and said, Let's go. The aftermath has not calmed down and the universal heavens are not settled. It is not the time for us to relax. Feng Lan chuckled as he followed behind. Zhang Yan and He Xianin left the boat and first returned to the Cloud Continent. Then, they used the 10,000 space ring to return to Xianhong Heaven in a short while. Zhang Yan stopped in the sky and said, Spiritual Master He, I will go into secluded meditation for a period of time. I might make a trip back to the sect. He Xianin bowed and said, I will help Spiritual Master take care of this place. Zhang Yan said, I have already informed Elder Peng. If there are any problems, you can find him for help. He Xianin nodded and paused for a moment before continuing, I also have a matter. Earlier, Heavenly Lord Mei told me that she needs to trade for the hut root grass. However, there isn't much of it left. I wonder if Heavenly Lord will allow it. Originally, he didn't need to ask Zhang Yan about such a thing. However, there was a problem. The grass might have grown because of the Xian stone. Now that the Xian stone was taken away, he didn't know whether or not it could survive. This was something he had to mention. After Zhang Yan heard him explain the reason, he thought about it. He had seen this hut root grass in the Imperial Edict Golden Hall. Only then did he know that it grew outside the Xian stone cave. However, the Xian stone was different from other things. When it landed in the world, it was just an image and couldn't benefit other things. There was a reason why this grass could grow. He said, Let's deal with this matter as per usual. He Xianin bowed and agreed. Zhang Yan waved his sleeves and returned to the sky-scraping spell boat. He asked the servants and found out that he had nothing to do these few years. He came to the inner manor and sat cross-legged, closing his eyes and entering a meditative state. However, this time, it only took him half a year to come out of seclusion. After a brief examination, he found that his progress was slower than before, as if he had stopped moving forward. He thought for a moment, then came out of the spell boat, broke through the void, and arrived at the outer realm grand formation. He used his divine will to ask, is fellow Taoist in here? Not long after, the great Kuning Zhao appeared in front of him and said, "Do you have any instructions for me, spiritual master?" Zhang Yan said, "Today, I feel that my progress is slowing down, but I still don't feel that it's time to change my cultivation method. That's why I came to you to ask for guidance." Ying Zhao didn't say much. He only said, "Spiritual master, you can continue your cultivation after you return to the sect." Zhang Yan's eyes flickered, and he suddenly realized that the karma was most likely in the Yuhuan heavens. He had been preparing to return to the mountain and sea realm, but since that was the case, he might as well leave now. He bowed and left the grand formation, preparing to use the world ring to return to the Xianhong heavens. However, when he stepped through the world ring, he was surprised to find that he was not in the inner realm, but in a place where the sky was dark and the earth was dark. He could feel a boundless Weili, as if all things in the world were revolving around it. Even he himself felt like he was about to melt into it. At this time, the space between his brows flashed, and the profound stone jumped out. It suddenly released a streak of light, opening up a path. A loud voice seemed to come from the end of the path. "Fellow Taoist, you've finally come." Zhang Yan looked in the direction of the light and saw a Taoist sitting there. The Taoist seemed so close, yet so far away. However, Zhang Yan could sense something else. The Taoist had a huge body, and was as majestic as the heavens and earth. Zhang Yan's heart trembled, and he bowed and said, "How should I address you, esteemed Taoist?" The Taoist smiled and slowly rose from his seat. At this moment, it was as if the heavens and earth were bowing to him, and all things bowed. "I am the Palace Lord of the Green Jade Palace, Fu Qingming." Chapter 1611. Just now, when Zhang Yan arrived, he had already guessed the identity of this person. Now that he had personally confirmed it, he bowed and said, "So it's Palace Master Fu. Junior greets you." Fu Qingming smiled. "Fellow cultivator, there is no need to stand on ceremony. I still have to thank fellow cultivator for helping my disciples implement the karma merit method." Hearing this, Zhang Yan knew that this person must have been paying attention to the inner realm. He said, "Palace Master Fu, there is no need to thank me. This is mutually beneficial. Not to mention that with Palace Master Fu here, all the changes in the Yuhuan heavens should be in your grasp." Fu Qingming shook his head and sighed. "Fellow cultivator is wrong. I can't do anything, and I can't do anything." Zhang Yan was a little surprised. After thinking about it, he guessed that this cultivator must be in a difficult position. It seemed that the rumors in the Yuhuan heavens were not groundless. At this moment, Fu Qingming looked at him and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, you must be wondering why it's like this. That's because to you, I'm still here, but to my peers, I'm already someone who has abandoned the world." When Zhang Yan heard this, he seemed to have guessed something. He couldn't help but raise his eyes and look at this cultivator. Fu Qingming smiled. It seems that fellow cultivator has already guessed it. Normally speaking, Ai's original body has already died. What is here now is only a strand of remnant essence that hasn't completely dissipated. Zhang Yan's heart trembled. No matter how he guessed, how could he have known that this supreme being had already passed away? What was even more unexpected was that Fu Qingming had calmly told him that the person who could cause such a cultivator to fall was at least an expert of the same generation. He pondered for a moment and said, "But I clearly feel that Palace Master Fu still has the ability to control the heavens." Fu Qingming said, "Of course. Although I only have a strand of essence left, if I were to exert my strength, it would still be easy for me to sweep through all living beings in the world. However, I have a great enemy threatening me outside. If I were to make a move, they would definitely discover my whereabouts. That's why I'm staying silent and not doing anything." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and raised his head to ask, "Palace Master Fu, is it related to the enemy that you were talking about?" Fu Qingming saw that he did not avoid mentioning this matter at all and could not help showing an expression of admiration, saying, "There is indeed such a reason." Zhang Yan shook his head with a smile. "Palace Lord Fu's greatest enemy is not someone this junior can interfere with. Fu Qingming said meaningfully, you can't do it now, but that doesn't mean you can't do it in the future. He paused for a moment before continuing slowly, fellow Taoist, that ancestral master made an agreement with me back then. I will guard the mystic stone for him and not let outsiders get their hands on it. In the future, if the person who obtains this opportunity comes, he or she will also repay me with karma. Zhang Yan's mind raced after hearing this. Not to mention that it involved the great underworld ancestral master, even someone like Fu Qingming would not stoop to lying. Moreover, after arriving here, the mystic stone voluntarily came out to light the way, which was enough to prove that everything was true. He thought for a moment. Since it was the ancestral master's agreement, as a junior, he should naturally bear this karma. Not to mention that he had already obtained a great opportunity from it. This was something that could not be exchanged for anything. Thinking about this, he asked, then dare I ask Palace Lord Fu, is it possible for Junior to know what that opportunity is? Seeing that he did not have any hesitation or fear, the admiration in Fu Qingming's eyes deepened. He said, this is a long story. Some people can't be easily mentioned, otherwise they will definitely sense it. I can only tell you that when I fought with my great enemy, although I severely injured this junior, I also lost my foundation. However, I had already predicted this beforehand, so I had already prepared a way out, which is the art of reincarnation. This art does not exist through the artifact, but through the metaphysical. If I can accumulate the essence and come back to this world, then I can be called Tao God. However, this is completely based on good karma. If the art exists, the spirit will exist, and if the art disappears, the spirit will die. I was afraid that my enemy would find me here, so before I succeed, I needed someone to protect me. Zhang Yan understood what this meant. To put it simply, although Fu Qingming was dead, he could entrust his spirit and qi activity to an object, as if he had given birth to a real spirit and come back to this world. The only difference was that he did not rely on ordinary treasures, but on the system of good karma to cultivate the so-called Tao God. As long as this system was still operating in the Yuhuan heavens, he would not perish. Of course, this meant that he was connected to this art, and there was no possibility of getting rid of it. This was extremely inconsistent with a cultivator's original intention of seeking transcendence, and it was equivalent to restraining oneself, making it difficult for them to meet. Once this restriction vanished, he would similarly vanish as well. However, one had to consider that this almighty expert's true body had already passed away a long time ago, and he was merely seeking life in the midst of death now. Thus, this was instead the best choice. Knowing this, he also understood why the Green Jade Palace had to push the art of karma to the heavens. This was directly related to the foundation of his Grand Master's future existence. After thinking about it, he said, Palace Lord Fu, what do you need me to do? Fu Qingming did not answer directly, but said, my friend, you should have seen those evil spirits. Zhang Yan said, I have fought with them, but I don't know where they came from. Fu Qingming said with a smile, to explain the origin, it involves the secret of the real yang. My friend has not entered this state, so it is difficult for you to understand the mystery. Let me briefly explain to you, what is the real yang? It is with the heaven, and it goes back and forth. It is both moving and not moving. It is both quiet and not quiet. It is far away and near. It is great and nameless. When Zhang Yan heard this, he pondered for a moment and understood something. Seeing his expression, Fu Qingming could not help but smile. He waited for a while and said just now, if a real yang cultivator stands in one place, there is no need for him to do anything intentionally. Wherever his mana covers, the heaven and earth will move according to his will, and all things will be born according to his nature. His heart is free, and great benefits follow. Once there is a change of fate, he can only see another peer. Zhang Yan's eyes flickered. Based on what the palace master of Emerald Jade Palace said, a true yang cultivator could turn everything to their own advantage. If that was the case, a true yang cultivator did not need to do anything. He only needed to stand there and he would be able to turn everything and make all living beings bow down to him. What was more terrifying was that he did not even know it. He could not help but think of the mighty True Yang cultivator in the smoke world. It seemed that either there was something wrong with him, or he was incomplete like this palace lord, or he did not want to care about the cultivators in the surroundings. Otherwise, the cultivators in the Junchen world would not have any hope of escaping. They would not even have the thought of escaping and would only wait for death there. Fu Qingming continued, if two True Yang cultivators were to fight, their chi activity and magic power would wear each other down until one of them was defeated. Only then would the fight end completely. That evil spirit is the remnant evil thought that my opponent unintentionally left behind. This evil is an evil against me. Yuhuan Heavens is covered by my chi activity, so it is often attacked by it. However, if I do not take the initiative to expel it, it will be difficult for it to know where this last strand of essence of mine is. Zhang Yan nodded slightly. No wonder this green jade palace lord was unwilling to help even though the Yuhuan Heavens was fighting to the death. The real reason was here. He thought for a while and said, however, I have a doubt. Since Palace Lord Fu needs to push the good deeds method to the Yuhuan Heavens, why don't you use the Enlightenment Realm cultivators in the secret palace? Fu Qingming sighed and said, the good deeds method is also very particular. If I am too deeply involved, I may not be able to return. However, my disciples are connected to me by karma. Once it spreads to the Yuhuan Heavens, it will only attract more evil thoughts and evil spirits. If I am not careful, my opponent might notice it. At this moment, Zhang Yan finally understood the reason for his departure and asked, Palace Master Fu, what should I do? Fu Qingming said, if I'm not wrong, you've been strengthening your origin all this while and have yet to cultivate the circulation technique. This is extremely correct, because once you do so, the evil thoughts will definitely come looking for you. Zhang Yan was surprised and said, isn't the evil thoughts coming for Palace Lord Fu? Why would they come for me? Fu Qingming said with a serious expression, it is not convenient to explain the situation now. Fellow Taoist, you only need to know that if the evil thoughts notice that someone is trying to step into the True Yang realm, they will definitely come to stop you at all costs and cut off your path. Zhang Yan's expression froze. No wonder when he tried to use the luck transformation technique, he felt a great karma attached to him. So this was the reason. He thought for a while and said, even if I go somewhere else, it won't work. Fu Qingming shook his head and said, fellow Taoist, you don't know the power of the True Yang. If you don't take this path, you will never be able to come into contact with it. If you take this path, you will not be able to avoid it and it will eventually find out. Zhang Yan smiled and said, if that is the case, I believe Palace Lord Fu has a solution. Fu Qingming nodded and said, this is exactly what I want to talk about. I will hand over all the methods to achieve success in the past, as well as everything that I know to fellow Taoist. I will also do my best to help fellow Taoist avoid external disturbances. After I help fellow Taoist achieve True Yang and have the power to defend the rest of the world, only then will I entrust my essence to you and nurture my Tao divinity. Zhang Yan's thoughts changed. The ancestral master had passed down the mystic stone and established karma with Fu Qingming. He could tell that the ancestral master had actually found someone to guide him. According to what the palace master of Azure Jade Palace had said, if he were to take this path alone, he would definitely be invaded by evil spirits and might never be able to succeed. However, if he agreed to it, it would actually be beneficial for both parties. After thinking for a while, he had already made up his mind. He cupped his hands and said, I agree to this. Fu Qingming nodded gladly and said, after fellow Taoist succeeds, I'll explain everything to fellow Taoist. Now, please come closer. Zhang Yan took a step forward along the rainbow light under his feet. However, he realized that this move did not shorten the distance between them. Fu Qingming smiled and said, fellow Taoist, please come closer. Zhang Yan was deep in thought. He did not take another step forward but only used his divine will to visualize. After sensing for a moment, he felt the presence of a vast chi activity. In a blink of an eye, he was already standing close to it. Fu Qingming nodded and said, why don't you bring out the dark stone? Zhang Yan did not hesitate. After concentrating for a moment, the dark stone appeared in front of him again. Fu Qingming's expression became solemn and he said, "Pay attention, fellow Taoist." After saying that, he stretched out his finger and pointed at the dark stone. Chapter 16:12. Zhang Yan only felt that the mystic stone seemed to have some kind of mysterious change, but when he tried to sense it again, it seemed to be no different from before. Fu Qingming said, "I have already used a secret method on it. If you use this item to circulate your cultivation method, you will not be affected by the evil thoughts for the time being. However, this will only delay it, and it is not without a price. With my ability, I can delay it for at most 1,000 years. After that, it will come even more fiercely. My opponent might also notice it because of this, so you need to be aware of it." In Zhang Yan's perception, Fu Qingming's figure seemed to be a little blurrier than before. He must have paid a lot of price. He thought for a moment and said, "In other words, once I circulate that cultivation method, I only have 1,000 years left?" Fu Qingming nodded and said, "That's right. It's just that my essence, qi, and magic power will continue to decline, and it might even last for a shorter period of time. At that time, if you still haven't stepped into the true Yang realm, you can only wait for your death. Fellow Taoist, you must remember that once you take this path, there's no turning back for both of us." Zhang Yan still did not know how long it would take to cultivate to the true Yang realm, so he could not tell if 1,000 years was long or short. However, from Fu Qingming's tone, it seemed to be a little rushed. He thought for a moment and said, "Before that, I have some things to deal with first." He was willing to accept this karma, but it was hard to say what the final result would be. As the hall master of Qinsang School, there were some things that he must explain to the sect clearly. Fu Qingming nodded and said, "I'll wait here for fellow Taoist's return. Fellow Taoist, you can take this with you." As he spoke, a spiritual light flew out from his body and headed forward. Zhang Yan stretched out his hand and took it. He turned his palm and found that it was a jade pendant. Fu Qingming said, "With this thing, you can go wherever my qi activity goes. You don't need to go through the 10,000 empty ring. However, you need to be careful. Other than the void primordial sea, if you go to the sky domain outside of the Yuhuan world, you need to keep it properly so that the evil thoughts won't find you." Zhang Yan expressed his thanks, then cupped his hands and said, "Then this junior shall take his leave." He took the jade pendant and looked at it. He did not return to Xianhong heaven. Instead, he landed in the formation beyond the heavens. He took a glance and summoned with his spirit. Not long after, Great Kuning Zhao appeared in front of him and said through his spirit, "Kuning Zhao, Great Kuning Zhao, did you see Lord Fu?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "So it's you who helped me." He understood the moment he heard it. Previously, Yu Kuning Gui advised him to leave the Yuhuan world and cultivate that technique. In fact, it wasn't because he wanted to persuade him to do so, but he purposely said it for Fu Qingming to hear. His goal was to force this bigwig out. After understanding the twists and turns, he bowed and said, "Thank you, Taoist." Ing Zhao said, "Great Kuning Zhao doesn't have to thank me." Those words were instructed by the founding master before he left. The founding master said long ago that Lord Fu likes to plan before taking action. This is a good thing, but it's hard for him to make a decision. When it comes to the crucial moment, someone has to force him. Zhang Yan smiled and said, "I see. Previously, Taoist couldn't speak of this matter because you were influenced by Palace Master Fu's qi activity." Ing Zhao replied, "Yes, Hai Kuning Zhao is a true yang cultivator. If he doesn't want others to know about his plans, it's hard for me to say it even if I know it clearly." Zhang Yan nodded to show that he understood. He said again, "Taoist friend, I need to borrow the cave abode to do something." Ing Zhao didn't hesitate. A ray of light shot out from his body. Zhang Yan stepped forward and entered the cave abode in the blink of an eye. With another thought, he landed on a hall that was surrounded by layers of restrictive formations. He walked to a table and took out the two-realm dial, placing it on it. From the conversation with Fu Qingming just now, it could be seen that this bigwig knew everything that was happening in the Yuhuan heavens. Even though Fu Qingming wouldn't purposely come to check on what he was doing, since he knew, he wouldn't ignore it. It wasn't convenient for him to listen in on their verbal communication with the sect. He stretched out his hand and pressed it on the dial. After a short while, he saw sect leader Qin's figure appear. He cupped his hands and said, "Sect leader Zhenren greets you." Sect leader Qin returned the greeting. He looked at him and asked, "Hall Master Du Zhen, do you have something important to tell me?" Zhang Yan said, "Disciple has finished his business here. Originally, I was preparing to return to the mountain and sea realm, but I accidentally learned that the patriarch left me a karma that I need to settle before I can return. However, the implications of this matter are not small, and it is extremely dangerous. Disciple isn't completely confident that I can complete it, so I need to inform Reverend Sect Leader." When Sect Leader Qin heard this, his expression turned solemn. He said, "Since it's the karma of the patriarch, as a disciple of the younger generation, I can't shirk it. However, Hall Master Du Zhen, please be careful." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "Disciple understands. If we can complete this task, then the threat of the smoke wave realm can be resolved." When sect leader Qin heard this, he more or less understood what was going on. He didn't say anything more. He just looked at him solemnly and said, "Hall Master Du Zhen, don't forget, if there are any difficulties, the sect will shoulder them with you." Zhang Yan replied earnestly, "Disciple will remember." He paused for a moment, then said, "Disciple obtained quite a bit of violet purity external medicine. After obtaining the good fortune of the patriarch, I no longer have any use for them. Originally, I wanted to bring them back with me, but now it seems that I can only borrow the power of the dial to send them back to the sect. There are also some pill concocting and artifact sacrificing techniques that I obtained from the Patriarch's Immortal's Cave. I might as well send them back as well." After explaining all of this, he said a few more words, then said his goodbyes to sect leader Qin. Using the two-realm dial, he sent the violet purity external medicine and the secret techniques to the mountain and sea realm. However, by the time he was done, the two-realm dial's spiritual light had dimmed. He knew that it was running out of spiritual opportunity. If he wanted to use it again, it would probably take some more time. He put away the magical item, then with a thought, left the Immortal's Cave. Originally, he had planned to ask Ying Xiao to return to the sect to oversee things. However, after some thought, he realized that before he reached the true Yang stage, he might still have some use for the Patriarch's Immortal's Cave. In particular, there were some undisclosed ancient books and records that might be of help to him in breaking through to the true Yang stage. Therefore, he decided to keep Ying Xiao by his side. He lifted his sleeve and took out the jade pendant. He poured his magic power into it, then circulated it slightly. In the next moment, he was back in the place where the sky was dark and the earth was dark. With a thought, the profound stone flew out and opened up a beam of light. He followed the path forward. Fu Qingming stood there, and his voice seemed to come from beyond the heavens. "Fellow Taoist, have you made the necessary arrangements?" Zhang Yan raised his head and looked over, then he nodded slightly. Fu Qingming said, "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to worry too much about your fellow Taoists. If things don't work out in the end, I'll help you cut off all your past before the enemy arrives. I won't implicate the sect behind you." Zhang Yan smiled. Fu Qingming was afraid that he would worry too much and lose his Tao heart that moved forward with an indomitable will. Indeed, this breakthrough was more dangerous than any of the previous breakthroughs. It could be said that he would either live or die. However, ever since Fu Qingming witnessed the extraordinary might of a true Yang cultivator, he knew that his life and death were not up to him at all in front of such an almighty figure. This person was merely a strand of his remaining essence, yet he had the ability to easily sweep through the heavens. If his original body was still here, how terrifying would he be? And the enemy that he spoke of must be even more powerful. Only by being on par with this person or surpassing him would he be able to have freedom. So, as long as Fu Qingming was willing to guide him, even if he didn't inherit the karma of the founding ancestor, he would still be willing to accept it. He walked over and cupped his hands, then he said, "Please guide me, Palace Master Fu." Fu Qingming's expression turned solemn, and he bowed solemnly as well. He said, "I'll hand over what I've learned in the past to fellow Taoist. Fellow Taoist, please guard your mind." Zhang Yan did as he was told. After a short while, he saw a light that was comparable to the sun on Fu Qingming's body, and then a ray of light shot into the center of his brows. Right at this moment, countless techniques appeared in his mind, and numerous scenes flashed by one after another. Just a slight glance was enough to shake his heart and mind. This was the cultivation experience of a true young almighty being who knew how many years, and now it was completely handed over to him. Although he was still unable to understand everything from it due to his lack of knowledge, as his cultivation level improved, he would one day be able to take it over completely and use it for his own use. The light on Fu Qingming's body gradually dimmed. After waiting for a moment, seeing that he had calmed down, he then said, "Although fellow Taoist has obtained these, you still can't use them as you wish. You can first comprehend it here, and don't be in a hurry to cultivate. If you don't understand, you can always come and ask I. Also, everything here is my own opinion, and it may not be the path that fellow Taoists should take. You can only observe from the side, and if you copy it, you will be restricting yourself instead." Zhang Yan agreed, then he sat down cross-legged and slowly comprehended the mystery within. If he wanted to cultivate true yang, he had to pass the cultivation method that was left in the mysterious stone. Although he had not started cultivating, from Fu Qingming's past memories, he could see that this cultivation method was divided into internal and external methods. The external method was to supplement the foundation and strengthen the Yuan foundation, which was what he had been doing previously. As for the internal method, everything needed to be circulated in the spirit's will, and then reflected back to the real world. Logically speaking, if a cultivator's foundation was deep enough, he could break through all the barriers in one go, and reach the other end, then from the outside, it would seem that he had achieved true yang in an instant. But in reality, this was difficult to achieve, because to circulate the spirit's essence qi, and to circulate this kind of cultivation method, the consumption of spirit's essence qi could almost devour a third-stage great cultivator in a few breaths. No cultivator could do this, and he was also unable to do it, even with the support of that mysterious object, because the consumption of spirit's essence qi here was far greater than the amount of replenishment, and at most, he could only persist for a little longer. In reality, there was no need for him to do so, because no matter how long he used to cultivate to this stage, it would not affect the final level of his achievements. Therefore, the longer he cultivated here, the better, and during the process, he could also carefully polish himself. Back then, when Fu Qingming entered this stage, he had roughly spent tens of thousands of years. Of course, this was under the circumstances where there was no external pressure, and sometimes he would stop to think, to harmonize his body, to nourish his yuan qi, and even to travel outside during this period. If all these were disregarded and he only cultivated, then 10,000 years would be enough. But compared to this, 1,000 years was still too short. However, Zhang Yan understood that Fu Qingming had probably done his best by giving him 1,000 years of time. Since Fu Qingming thought that Zhang Yan would be able to achieve something within this time limit, then there should be some unknown means that could help Zhang Yan's cultivation. Chapter 1613. Zhang Yan carefully read through the pros and cons of the technique before withdrawing from the divine will. He said, "Palace Master Fu took a long time to cultivate in the past, and now you've set a time limit of 1,000 years. Are you not afraid that I won't be able to do it?" Fu Qingming said, "Many things that I did in the past during my cultivation, when I thought about it carefully, there were many shortcomings. Although you've just started on this path, with me by your side, you won't take those detours, and you don't have to worry about the side issues. Although 1,000 years is a bit hasty, with your foundation, as long as you're sincere, it's not impossible." Because Fu Qingming had already passed on his cultivation experience, Zhang Yan understood what the cultivation method was like. He thought for a long time and said slowly, "Palace Master Fu is taking a shortcut. There were many twists and turns on the path to the true yang. If one couldn't get through it, he would have to turn back and find the right path again. This method was equivalent to using Fu Qingming's past experience, not taking any side roads, and walking straight. In short, in order to achieve this upper realm, everything that could be sacrificed would be sacrificed, regardless of whether it was useful or not. Fu Qingming nodded and said, "That's right, but time is of the essence, so we can only do this. Fellow Taoist doesn't have to worry about anything. I can promise that this won't delay fellow Taoists' cultivation. Whatever you lack in the meantime, you can cultivate it back after you succeed." Zhang Yan, however, had a different opinion. Fu Qingming might be right, but he had cultivated to this point, and every step he took was done to the extreme. He couldn't simply pursue the realm of cultivation and abandon his greatest advantage. Moreover, even if he could really step into the true yang, his future achievements would not surpass Fu Qingming's. No matter how great he was, he would just be another Fu Qingming. Moreover, from another perspective, he didn't think that this method was necessarily right. Because although this method would cut off the branches of the vine, he felt that some things might not be missed because of this. As a result, he said, Junior believes that the right path should be taken and not be missed. Fu Qingming shook his head and advised, fellow Taoist's choice will definitely be several times more difficult than the original method, and the time needed will undoubtedly be much longer. Moreover, because there are many forked paths that I have not walked, it will be even more difficult to correct them. You must know that when you circulate your cultivation method, there will always be external forces that will push you away. If your Tao heart is not firm, you will suffer from these external disturbances and deviate from the right path. If you are not careful, you will never be able to turn back, and from then on, you will have no fate with the great Tao. I hope fellow Taoist will consider carefully. Zhang Yan smiled and replied, Palace Lord Fu once told me not to imitate you and to walk my own path. This is also the reason why I am considering it. Fu Qingming stared at him and said, Fellow Taoist, do you really intend to do this? Zhang Yan said solemnly, Rest assured, Palace Lord Fu. I know my own situation very well and will not joke around with my life. Fu Qingming thought for a moment and finally agreed. He said, Since fellow Taoist insists on this, I can only allow fellow Taoist to try, but if there is anything wrong, I hope fellow Taoist can turn back to the right path in time. According to common sense, he could use magic power to change Zhang Yan's mind and make the latter follow his method. However, he knew that the great underworld patriarch had set up a trap on the mystic stone, so it was impossible for him to do this. Most importantly, this was Zhang Yan's own insistence. If he forcefully stopped him from doing this, once his Tao heart was disturbed, even the last bit of success would be ruined. He was still clear about the importance of this matter. At this moment, Zhang Yan said seriously, Palace Lord Fu, since I have embarked on this path, I will not think about other things. Sometimes, I will worry about gains and losses, or blindly think about the path of retreat, and I will lose the courage to advance. Fu Qingming sighed softly and said, Since that's the case, I'll leave it up to you. But fellow Taoist, please remember this. No matter what level you've cultivated to, your thoughts must be pure. You must remember this. This concerns your future abilities, so you mustn't neglect it. Zhang Yan's expression turned solemn. He said, I will remember. From the memories, he could see that once a cultivator entered the true yang realm, his divine will would involuntarily spread out, and when it shone into the real world, it would transform into many incarnations. These incarnations would develop their own thoughts, and each of them had the ability to turn the world upside down. They could be seen as the cultivator's essence chi incarnations, or as a single person. If the cultivator's thoughts were not pure during the process of breaking through, the incarnations might fight and kill each other, or even go against the main body, thinking about replacing the main body. However, if the incarnations were focused, they might even help the cultivator instead. Normally, the purer the thoughts and the stronger the mind, the fewer the incarnations would be, and the more compatible the incarnations would be with the main body, and the smaller the possibility of rebellion. However, it was impossible for there to be no incarnations, unless the cultivator no longer had any thoughts. If that was the case, then the cultivator would not be able to transcend, and it would be impossible for him to step onto the true yang path. At last, Fu Qingming said, "If you encounter any problems, you can ask me anytime. Fellow Taoist, you know how to find me." He cupped his hands, and with a flash of light, he disappeared. Zhang Yan also cupped his hands and raised his head, his eyes flashing slightly. He dared to do this because, firstly, he had the remnant of the jade, and secondly, he had the Qi Lu as a backup. It was easier to attract the unknown things there, and he could obtain more from it. Moreover, after understanding the abilities of the true yang cultivators, he felt that the master behind the Qi Lu was not simple, and those evil thoughts might not be able to chase him there. Of course, this was only his own judgment. Whether it was true or not, he had no way of knowing. With a thought, he instantly landed in the mysterious Great Outer Heaven formation. He called for Yu Kuan and Ning Zhao with his divine will, then he once again stepped into the abode left behind by the patriarch. He arrived at a large hall, sat down cross-legged, and found the location of the strength Dao root fruit. With a thought, he instantly disappeared from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was already in the Qi Lu. He looked around, and there was no change from the last time he came back. He focused his gaze, and the profound stone slowly appeared. Clearly, he could still summon it here. He found that the master of the Qi Lu seemed to be very tolerant of him. This might be because he was the only cultivator at the 6th rank of Strength Dao, or it might be because of other reasons. However, this was not the time to think about these things. There were some things that were useless to think about before reaching a certain level of cultivation. He sat down cross-legged, concentrated, and continued to absorb the origin Qi from the profound stone. Although the speed at which his origin Qi was growing had slowed down, it was not to the point where it could not grow anymore. This meant that there was still room for improvement. This was an external method, and it could be counted as one of the foundations. Only when his origin Qi was strong enough could he support the consumption of the divine will. Every bit more counted. If he did not reach the end, he would not stop. As long as he did not start using that method, he still had plenty of time. This period of sitting and watching took 3 years. Until one day, he suddenly felt that the improvement of his origin Qi was so small that it was almost undetectable. No matter how much he cultivated, he could not move it anymore. He knew that he had probably touched it. At this step, it meant that the external method was complete, and he could start to cultivate the internal method. Once he stepped on it, he could no longer turn back. However, he had the remnant of the jade in his hand, so he could first deduce and experience it. Thus, he made up his mind and adjusted his origin Qi. He reached into his sleeves and held onto the remnant of the jade. Then, his mind sank into it. While he was cultivating on the Red Continent, the Yuhuan Heavens, under Elder Peng's leadership, had annihilated the Juyuan Heavens and the other heavens that weren't inferior to the Yuhuan Heavens one by one. The heavens that had been watching from the sidelines had also put down their pride and taken the initiative to come to the Green Jade Palace to sign the treaty. As the powers that opposed the good point system were all wiped out, as many golden halls of appointment orders entered the heavens, this system also quickly spread throughout the heavens. On a cliff lake in the Cloud Continent, Elder Peng was playing Seeking Dao chess with Elder Qi Ziyuan. Feng Lan was watching from the side, occasionally nodding his head and occasionally showing a look of pity. After a long while, Elder Peng threw the chess stick and laughed. "It seems like I am at a disadvantage." Qi Ziyuan looked at him and said, "Elder Peng has too many things on his mind, otherwise, I might not be able to win you." "Oh." A bright light flashed in Elder Peng's eyes and he said, "This game of chess hasn't finished yet. We are only halfway through and Elder Qi dares to say that you can win me." Qi Ziyuan said calmly, "As long as you don't have any distracting thoughts in your mind, the result will be the same." Elder Peng sighed when he heard that and said, "There are too many mundane matters, so how can I put them all down? Elder Qi is focused on cultivating, but I can't compare to you." Qi Ziyuan said, "Now that the heavens is filled with golden halls of appointment orders, one can imagine that without 10,000 years, as long as one is a cultivator, they will rely on the good point system to survive. Elder Peng has already done what many seniors and teachers in the palace haven't done in a million years, so what else is there to worry about? Some things can be left to the younger generation to do. Feng Lan said from the side, you can't say that. Our Yuhuan heavens also has threats outside, such as that evil demon. Be it Zhu Yu or that Yang Yugong, we have investigated and found that they have colluded with them. Even the heavenly lord of a world was bewitched and used by them. From this, one can see the ability of these evil demons. If we aren't careful, who knows what will happen next? Elder Peng nodded his head and said, we really have to guard against the evil demon. It isn't easy to set up the good point system, so we mustn't let it fall. He raised his eyes and said sincerely, now that the heavens needs patrolling elders to observe the changes in the heavens, I don't have many people I can use. I wonder if Elder Qi can come out and help me. Qi Ziyuan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he put down the chess stick and seemed to be thinking. At this moment, a clear light came and landed not far away from the three of them. The deacon Daoist walked out and handed over a jade talisman. He said, Elder Peng, this is a letter from the outer world. The sender is Han Su. Han Su. Elder Peng took the jade talisman and looked at it for a moment. He frowned and threw the jade talisman on the table. He snorted and said, this woman wants to come back to Yuhuan heavens. Feng Lan was surprised. The Dahuan innocent deity maiden can escape from the disaster and take refuge. Han Su is lucky to escape with her life, but she has lost all her mana. Is she coming back to die? Elder Peng shook his head and said, this time, she didn't come back alone. Someone else came back with her. As he spoke, his expression became serious. Things are getting a little troublesome. Chapter 16-14. Seeing Elder Peng's solemn expression, Feng Lan also felt that things were not as simple as they seemed. He asked, Elder, who are they? What's the problem? Elder Peng did not answer, but looked at Qi Ziyuan and said, Elder Qi, what's your decision? Qi Ziyuan thought for a moment, then nodded and said, I will persuade them to come out and help you, but how to control them is not up to me. He knew very well that Elder Peng came here not only to ask him to come out, but also to ask him to lead the original group of people who could listen to his orders to come out and work for the palace. Elder Peng solemnly cupped his hands and said, all right, then I'll have to trouble you, Elder. The two factions used to have conflicts, but with the implementation of the karma point system in the various worlds, things had come to a conclusion, and these disputes were no longer necessary. There were also many disciples in the Guardian faction, and they could not all be defeated. Some could only be imprisoned, but some could be of great use. Qi Ziyuan silently returned the bow. Elder Peng stood up and bade farewell. Then, he left the place with Feng Lan and the deacon Taoist. Along the way, his expression was solemn, as if he was thinking about something. He kept sending out talisman after talisman. Seeing that he did not speak, Feng Lan did not ask further. Not long after, the three returned to the palace, and Elder Peng instructed the disciples. Not long after, Guan Longzhao also arrived, cupped his hands and bowed, and said, Elder, what's the matter? Elder Peng handed the jade talisman to the two, and said, take a look at it first. After the two took a look, they looked at each other and said, what's the origin of this Liang Jinglong? The jade talisman only briefly described a few words, and they did not see much from it, but they felt that this person who came with Han Su was probably not simple. Elder Peng said in a deep voice, tens of thousands of years ago, I met this person with my master. Feng Lan asked, is this person's cultivation very high? Elder Peng shook his head and said, the problem is not his cultivation. In terms of cultivation, there are many elders of the secret palace, and each of them practices the secret techniques passed down by the palace lord, so there are many people with high cultivation. Feng Lan was puzzled. But Elder seems to be quite afraid of this person. Why is that? Elder Peng mused for a moment before speaking, since this person has come, all of you will eventually hear about this matter. There is no harm in knowing about it in advance. He looked outside and said, over the past million years, many Enlightenment realm cultivators have appeared in our universal heavens. Do you know what happened to them? Feng Lan asked in surprise. Don't they all die from the calamity? Elder Peng said in a deep voice, some of them really died in the calamity, but most of them actually went to another realm. Not only them, but some elders of the Green Jade Palace also went to another realm. My master was one of them. When the two of them heard this, their hearts trembled. They never imagined that they would hear such a shocking secret today. Peng Changchang Daoren said, this matter is very secretive. Other than Heavenly Lord Ao who might know a little about it, the rest of the all-world's heavenly lords don't know. They only think that these senior almighty experts are dead. Feng Lan asked tentatively, where did they go? What did they go to do? Peng Changchang Daoren said, I also don't know what they went to do, but from the documents left behind in the past, it seems to have something to do with refining something. He had been the first seat of the Hall of Duty in the past and knew many secrets of the palace. After he accomplished something that the Green Jade Palace hadn't done in a million years, his position was also very different. He could be considered to have truly grasped the power of the Cloud Continent. Many secrets that were originally hidden and updated were no longer guarded against him. However, this matter was still unclear. Guan Longzhao asked, could it be that the Liang Jinglong that elder mentioned came from there? Elder Peng said slowly, yes. The matter this time is not about that person himself, but the force behind him. Back then, my Green Jade Palace had an agreement with them. Every once in a while, we would send many Enlightenment Realm cultivators over. I suspect that this person has come today for this matter. However, just now, after the war, the heavenly realms have just stabilized. There is still the threat of the evil demons outside, so we can't send too many people out. If too many elders of the secret hall are sent, how will we have the power to suppress both inside and outside? Feng Lan was in disbelief and said, why would those heavenly lords be so willing to go there? Peng Changchang Daoren said, because that power is willing to give them the Enlightenment Realm's secret technique after the 4 tribulations. This is an offer that is hard to reject. Of course, there are also people who are unwilling. These people usually die from the tribulations. Feng Lan thought about it and realized that this matter was not without benefits for the Green Jade Palace. On one hand, it fulfilled the promise of that power, and on the other hand, it quietly got rid of those powerful cultivators in the inner world. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, that was in the past. Just now, the Green Jade Palace and Yang Yugong have just stopped fighting. Their power has expanded too quickly and they lack manpower. They indeed don't have much spare power to care about the outer world. Guan Longzhao obviously thought about this problem and said, is there no time limit for the signing of the contract? Peng Changchang Daoren said, although I have not seen the contract, I only know that it is within the time limit. Feng Lan also felt that it was troublesome and said, it is indeed troublesome. Guan Longzhao did not speak. He felt that the more troublesome thing was that this person seemed to be related to Han Su. Peng Changchang said to the two of them, the two of you should go and make some preparations. Since this person has handed me the contract, no matter what, I will be a good host. The two of them agreed. After the two of them left, Peng Changchang took out a talisman and poured his magic power into it. However, after waiting for a long time, he realized that there was no reaction. He shook his head and put the talisman away. He originally wanted to ask Duge Hang for advice, but the cultivation place was not a place that he could enter. Unless Duge Hang took the initiative to summon him, he would not be able to see him. This method was not feasible. After thinking for a while, he went to the rear hall and arrived in front of a jade disc. With a wave of his sleeve, a bright light flashed above it. Not long after, Ao Xiao's figure appeared. He smiled and bowed. Fellow Taoist Peng, do you want to invite me for tea again? Peng Changchang said in a deep voice, fellow Taoist Ao, someone has come from that place again. It is someone that we are familiar with. Ao Xiao was stunned at first. Then, he thought of something and asked, are you sure? Peng Changchang nodded and said, I have already checked. The seal and aura are all the same. Ao Xiao frowned and said, I thought that place had already been destroyed. Peng Changchang Daoren said, I thought so too. Ever since that priest Liang came here tens of thousands of years ago, my master left with him. After that, there was no news from that place. Who would have thought that he would appear again today? This time, he has brought Han Su with him. I am afraid that he has come with ill intentions. He was dissatisfied with that faction. If his master, Elder Gu, had not left with that person, they might have conquered more than half of the Yuhuan heavens tens of thousands of years ago. Then, the conservative faction would not have gradually gained the upper hand. Ao Xiao said, then I should meet this old friend of mine. He suddenly thought of something and asked, fellow Taoist, have you thought about what if that faction has really been destroyed? Peng Changchang said in a deep voice, to tell you the truth, I have the same thought. But no matter what, I have to meet him before I can make a judgment. Peng Changchang's heart was heavy. If Ao Xiao's guess was right, then the matter behind this was even more complicated. Ao Xiao asked, is fellow Taoist Zhang still in the Yuhuan heavens? Peng Changchang Daoren said, before he left, fellow Taoist Zhang said that he would return to the sect soon. Now that a few years have passed, I am afraid that he is no longer in the Yuhuan heavens. Ao Xiao said in a deep voice, that is fine. This is a matter of the Yuhuan heavens. It is not good to involve others. Qinghua heavens, Wanka continent. A covered Dharma raft was anchored on the shore of the lake. A 40-year-old Taoist with a long beard under his chin, wearing a large cloak, sat on the jade couch. He looked calm and peaceful, and he had a relaxed posture. Beside him stood a white-feathered crane that would flap its wings from time to time. Han Su was sitting on the other side, and Han Xiaorua was standing behind her. Han Su covered her face with her hand and took a sip from a cup of dew. Then, she put it down and said, Husband, it seems like the Green Jade Palace does not take you seriously. They have not come to greet you even after so long. Liang Jinglong chuckled and said, that's because he hasn't decided how he wants to greet me. Han Su did not say anything else. Instead, she drank another cup of dew. Liang Jinglong looked at her and said, now that you have lost your arcane energy, it is not good for you to drink too much of this dew. 10 cups a day will do. Han Su sighed and said, what does it matter if I drink more or less? Now that I have lost my Dharma body, I can only return to the world to cultivate. I am just worried about my daughter. Liang Jinglong laughed again and said, with me here, what do you have to worry about? You have built a good foundation for your daughter. When I pass the other half of the secret technique to her, she will be able to cultivate the body of the mysterious ascending goddess. Her future achievements will be above yours. Han Su fiddled with the jade cup in her hand, but she did not drink anymore. She only said, so what? She will never become a true yang. Liang Jinglong laughed and said, true yang. There is no way to go on this path. You should give up on this idea. Han Su retorted, not necessarily. I heard that Taoist Zhang, who obtained the mysterious stone, was found by the great underworld patriarch. He might be able to do it. A strange smile appeared on Liang Jinglong's face. He said, how can it be so easy? The palace master of the Green Jade Palace is a true Yang Almighty, but in the past million years, who could enter this realm? Haven't you ever thought about the reason behind it? Han Su was startled and frowned in deep thought. Liang Jinglong said unhurriedly, once the body of the mysterious ascending goddess is formed, one will also be able to enjoy eternal life. Although it will be difficult for one's arcane energy to grow, there will be no disasters or tribulations. Why should I be greedy? Han Su sighed and said, perhaps what you said is right. She looked up and said, I will agree to your conditions. As long as you take care of the person who destroyed my Dharmakaya, I will hand over the other half of the technique to you. However, you must not disappoint us. Liang Jinglong said seriously, don't worry. Before you reincarnate, I will definitely give you an explanation. At this moment, a rainbow light shone from the myriad empty ring. He squinted his eyes and said, it's here. Chapter 16:15. The person who came from Green Jade Palace to welcome them was Guan Longzhao. He looked from afar and realized that he couldn't tell what Liang Jinglong's cultivation was. It was as if he was covered by a layer of fog and his aura wasn't leaked out at all. His heart sank. His expression didn't change on the surface. He stepped on the cloud light and came close. He bowed and said, "Is this Liang Shangzhen? I am Guan Longzhao. The palace specially ordered me to come and welcome you." As for Han Su, he could only pretend that he didn't see her. Although she was once the master of a world, her Dharma body had been destroyed and she was no longer a threat. Liang Jinglong raised his hand slightly and returned the bow. He smiled and said, "I heard that the person in charge of the palace is Elder Peng Xinhu. Is that true?" Guan Longzhao replied, "Yes." Liang Jinglong revealed an emotional expression and said, "In the past, when I came to this place, I met Elder Peng once. At that time, he was just an ordinary elder in his palace. Who would have thought that he would be the head of the hall manager now?" Guan Longzhao said, "The palace has changed a lot since Liang Shangzhen came back. It's normal that Shangzhen doesn't know." Liang Jinglong said meaningfully, "Now that I have returned to this place, I want to take a look around." Guan Longzhao lowered his head slightly and said, "Elder Peng is already waiting in the palace. Please follow me." Liang Jinglong agreed and activated the carriage, following Guan Longzhao through the 10,000 empty ring. Not long later, they arrived on the cloud continent and headed towards a floating island in the sky. When they arrived in front of a bright golden hall, Guan Longzhao said, "Liang Shangzhen, Elder Peng is waiting in the hall." At this moment, a disciple on duty came up and bowed to Han Su and her daughter. He said, "Two esteemed guests, the palace has already prepared a guest house. Please follow me." Han Su and her daughter looked at Liang Jinglong. The latter waved his sleeve and said, "It's fine if you two go and find a place to settle down first. I'll come over later." He then looked at Guan Longzhao and said meaningfully, "The Green Jade Palace controls the Yuhuan heavens, so there shouldn't be any accidents here." Guan Longzhao said sternly, "Shang Liang, you're wrong. My Green Jade Palace isn't the master of Yuhuan. I'm merely an ally with the cultivators of the various worlds." "Oh, is that so?" Liang Jinglong playfully smiled and said, "We have already wasted a lot of time here. Don't let Elder Peng wait for too long." Guan Longzhao made an inviting gesture. Liang Jinglong laughed and strode inside. Elder Peng was already waiting there, but his expression was calm. Liang Jinglong didn't mind. The two of them exchanged greetings and sat down. After exchanging greetings, Elder Peng dismissed most of the people in the hall, leaving only his trusted deacon at the side. He then said, "There hasn't been any news from your world for tens of thousands of years. May I know how it is now?" Liang Jinglong casually said, "Thank you for your concern, Elder Peng. Previously, the Bailing Heavens was only besieged by a powerful enemy. Now that we've defeated them, we've suffered great losses. I don't know when they'll attack again, so I came to your place to ask you to fulfill your promise." Elder Peng Daoren said, "Since it's a promise from the palace, I won't shirk it. I just want to ask, how's my teacher?" Liang Jinglong regretfully sighed and said, "Your teacher, Elder Gu, passed away 10,000 years ago." Elder Peng didn't show any sadness. No one who went to the Bailing Heavens had ever returned. When Elder Peng went, he had already expected this result. He pondered for a moment and said, "How many people are you going to take away today?" Liang Jinglong said, "This isn't my problem alone. When I came out, the sect had already drafted the rules." He took out a jade talisman from his sleeve. "Please take a look, Elder Peng." Elder Peng took it and looked at it for a while. His brows gradually furrowed. "Isn't it a little too much?" Liang Jinglong said, "Ever since the battle, I've been short on manpower. No one knows when the enemy will come again. Furthermore, the number of people I'm asking for hasn't exceeded the number agreed upon by our two clans." Elder Peng pondered for a moment and said, "Right now, everything here isn't stable and needs some time to reorganize. If Liang Shangzhen isn't in a hurry, let me think about this matter carefully. Liang Jinglong chuckled and stood up. It's fine. I'm not in a hurry to leave this time. Elder Peng, you can take your time to think about it. I won't disturb you any longer today. Elder Peng personally escorted him out of the hall. After he returned, he called out, and with a flash of light, a formation spirit that looked like a maid appeared in the hall. He instructed, keep an eye on this person. I want to know his whereabouts. If there's anything, report to me at any time. The formation spirit acknowledged the order, bowed, and then disappeared. The Taoist attendant asked, Elder, do you suspect something? Elder Peng Daoren said, I just feel that this person is a little strange. Back then, Bingling Heaven was attacked by demons just like our universal heaven. If it's really as he said and the demons were repelled, then it's fine. If it's not like that. Although he didn't continue, the Taoist attendant understood that if the result was the opposite, then Bingling Heaven might have already been destroyed by the demons. Liang Jinglong himself might have been sent here by them. Although this might not be the case, it was indeed necessary to be on guard. At this moment, a spiritual light flew in from outside the hall. The Taoist attendant summoned it over and said, Elder, that Liang Shengzhen didn't return to the guest house. He went to the Golden Edict Hall first. Elder Peng thought for a while and said, I understand. Keep an eye on him. There's one more thing I need you to do for me. The Taoist attendant said, please instruct me, Elder. Peng Daoren said, find a way to understand the situation in Bingling Heaven. The Taoist attendant bowed and said, Elder, if that place is really occupied by demons, ordinary disciples won't be able to go there. Elder Peng took off a talisman and handed it to him. Take this talisman to the secret hall and ask the elders there to help. Liang Jinglong stayed in the Golden Edict Hall for a whole day. Just now, he came out and returned to the guest house. Han Su came over and asked, Husband, did you find anything? Liang Jinglong smiled and said, Peng Xinhu will not easily give me an answer before he understands my background. We still have to wait. I believe that the people heading to United Spirit Sky are already on their way, right? Han Su worriedly said, will there be anything wrong? Liang Jinglong said, what can be wrong? I've already made arrangements. They won't be able to see anything. You can just stay here for the night. I've already ordered people to find a suitable place for you to reincarnate. I believe there will be news in a few days. Han Su said, I'll listen to husband's arrangements. However, I hope husband will pay more attention to my daughter's cultivation. Liang Jinglong glanced at her and said, Xiaorua is also my daughter. I won't let her delay her. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. Liang Jinglong was extremely patient. During this time, he only went to the Golden Edict Hall and the guest house twice. Apart from that, he was guiding Han Xiaorua in her cultivation. He didn't do anything out of the ordinary. However, he didn't relax his surveillance on him. One day, he was talking to Han Su when he suddenly felt something was wrong. He said, there are no outsiders here. Come out. A figure gradually appeared. It was a handsome young cultivator. He cupped his hands and said, Greetings, senior brother. Liang Jinglong sat down and said, Tell me, how is it? The young cultivator said, Senior brother, I've already taken a look. The formation outside the Xianhong heaven world is still there. It didn't disperse after Priest Zhang took away the mystic stone. Further outside, there's the Jade Kun guarding it. I was discovered the moment I arrived there, so I didn't dare to stay for long. Forgive me for being straightforward, but it's not the right time to go there. Han Su was puzzled. Husband wants to go to the Xianhong heaven. That divine item has already been taken away by Priest Zhang. Liang Jinglong laughed and said, Back then, great underworld patriarch stayed in the Xianhong heaven for a long time. He might have left many good things behind. Han Su shook her head. The Luo Mountain Monastery has occupied the Xianhong heaven for millions of years. If they had these things, they would have already taken them away. Liang Jinglong said, that might not be the case. I won't be satisfied if I don't take a look. Not only the Xianhong heaven, there are many other worlds that I want to go to. You don't have to ask anymore. Han Su looked at him deeply. She guessed that Liang Jinglong might know something that no one knew but was just unwilling to tell her. However, her dharmakaya had already dissipated, so it was useless to think about it. Hence, she didn't say anything more. She only said, since husband has something to discuss, I'll take my leave first. With that, she bowed and went to the back of the hall. After she left, Liang Jinglong used his divine will to transmit a message. Junior brother, what do you think of these days? The young cultivator replied, Peng Xinhu is quite capable. Within the heavens, most of them have been subdued by him. If we were given more time, we wouldn't have the chance to intervene even if we wanted to. Liang Jinglong said, I've waited here to make a vow in front of His Majesty. If I don't destroy the karma method, my life will be in danger. The young cultivator said, Senior brother, do you have a plan? Liang Jinglong said, the current situation is that Peng Xinhu is relying on his alliance to subdue the heavens. There are two ways to start. One is to find a way to provoke a conflict between him and his allies and break up their alliance. The second is to divert as many people from Green Jade Palace as possible. This way, both sides will lose their balance and internal strife will definitely occur. At that time, we will have a chance. After a few words, the young cultivator left the divine will. Just as he was about to leave, he hesitated and asked, Senior brother, is there really a treasure in the Xianhong heaven? Liang Jinglong laughed. Maybe, maybe not. You need to know that you're going to the Xianhong heaven. Do you really think that Peng Xinhu won't notice that you're going to the Xianhong heaven? I'm doing this for him and his allies to see. He knew that the Xianhong heaven had been stationed at the Luo Mountain Monastery for millions of years. Later on, Zhang Yan went there. Even if there was anything there, it would have been taken away long ago. Liang Jinglong was only doing this to confuse them so that the people of the Yuhuan heavens wouldn't be able to figure out their true purpose for coming here. The young cultivator said tactfully, Senior brother, the Yuhuan heavens aren't stupid. I'm afraid no one will believe it so easily. Liang Jinglong didn't mind. It's just a casual move. Who knows when it will come in handy? The young cultivator thought about it, then bowed and left. However, the two of them didn't notice that as they were speaking, there was also an invisible shadow standing in the corner of the pavilion. Seeing that the young cultivator had left, the shadow also turned into an invisible wind and disappeared. Chapter 16:16. Within the Cloud Continent's Golden Hall, Elder Peng and Ao Shao were sitting opposite each other, discussing Liang Jinglong's matter. Elder Daoran said, the elder I invited to Bingling Sky to investigate has already arrived. After some investigation, there seems to be no movement on the surface, but we don't know what's going on in the inner world. We'll have to wait for at least a few decades before we can get any concrete news. Ao Shao said, that doesn't mean anything. Elder Daoran said, that's right. However, I can refuse once or twice, but I can't drag this on forever. Liang Jinglong seems to be behaving himself now, but if he forces me with the contract, I have no choice but to fulfill my promise. Ao Shao said, what did Liang Jinglong say this time? Elder Peng handed one over and said, this is Liang Jinglong's condition. He wants 5 enlightenment stage cultivators who have passed 4 tribulations from our Yuhuan all heaven. Ao Shao was shocked. 5? He shook his head and said, after Yang Yogong's death, the only cultivator who has passed the 4th tribulation transcendence besides me is Heavenly Lord Su Yang. Even if the 2 of us go, we won't be able to gather enough people. We'll have to transfer 3 people from your sect's secret palace. Elder Peng said, according to the agreement, fellow Taoist will only be staying in my universal heavens, so there's no need for you to go there. Therefore, I'm going to choose 4 elders from the secret palace. I won't lie to fellow Taoist, there are only 3 4th tribulation elders in my palace. If we follow the Bingling Heaven's request, we'll have to use up all the strength in the palace. Ao Shao pondered for a moment before he suddenly raised his head and said, hold on. I wasn't included in the contract. Only a few people knew about this back then. It was never recorded in the contract. Do you think Liang Jinglong knew about it? Elder Daoran said, since he is here on Bingling Sky's orders, then his sex elders will naturally inform. As he said this, his expression changed as if he had thought of something. Ao Shao smiled. He extended his hand and nodded at the jade talisman. He said, fellow Taoist, you can write my name on it. Let's see how he reacts. If he doesn't have any doubts or doesn't even ask, it means that there's something fishy about his background. Elder Peng nodded and said, fellow Taoist Ao is right. He paused for a moment before continuing in a heavy tone, but if he really did come under orders, then it will be very troublesome. Ao Shao pondered for a moment before he raised his head and looked at Mo Tiange. His eyes shone as he said, fellow Taoist, have you ever thought of inviting fellow Taoist Zhang back or inviting the people from the sect behind him to come here? That way, even if a few elders of the secret hall leave, we can still intimidate the others. Elder Peng's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, that's a good idea. He knew that Zhang Yan was most likely studying the true yang cultivation technique. However, as long as such a person was still in the remnant heavens and stood on the Green Jade Palace's side, he would always be a deterrent. He said, I will first head to Xianhong Heaven to write a letter. Even if fellow Taoist Zhang has returned, you must find a way to invite him back even if you have to pay a price. At this moment, in the guest house, Liang Jinglong was standing in front of the pavilion with his hands behind his back as he looked in the direction of the Golden Hall. The young cultivator walked in and bowed before saying in a low voice, Senior Marshal Brother, you're right. That aura is indeed Ao Shao's. After this old dragon arrived, he has been talking with Peng Xinhu in the hall for the whole day. Liang Jinglong narrowed his eyes and said, he is looking for a way to deal with me. He turned around and sat down on his seat. He raised his hands and clenched them into fists before extending them forward. He said, look, the Green Jade Palace and Yi Haitian are like two fists. Together with Jianji Heaven and the rest of the forces, they have managed to maintain the situation in the remnant heavens just now. If I can find a way to break them apart, it will be equivalent to cutting off an arm of the Green Jade Palace. The young cultivator became spirited and said, Senior Marshal Brother, are you going to make a move now? Liang Jinglong pointed to a jade talisman on the table and said, take this official document that I've written and seek an audience with Peng Xinhu. Ask him if he's made up his mind. If he refuses, there's no need to pester him. Just put it down and leave. The young cultivator immediately said, I will do it immediately. With that, he picked up the talisman book and left in a hurry. Liang Jinglong did not leave. He sat where he was and waited. However, an hour later, the young cultivator returned. Just now, he entered the pavilion and said, Senior Marshal Brother, as you expected, Peng Xinhu did not appear. He only found someone to send me away. Liang Jinglong chuckled and said, there is no hurry. I will see how long he can hide. Alright, you can go. The young cultivator did not leave. Instead, he said, Senior Marshal Brother, I was ordered by you to inquire about the cave abode left behind by the great underworld patriarch. I discovered that there is indeed a place that is not simple. Liang Jinglong had heard a lot of such news recently, so he said casually, tell me about it. The young cultivator said, that place is in the Leaf Sea Sky, and there are still restrictions there. Rumor has it that Taoist Zhang went there and killed 2 cultivators of Duju after he came out. Liang Jinglong immediately became interested and said, the Leaf Sea Sky is Ao Laolong's territory. How do you know about it? The young cultivator said, previously, spiritual master Han said that Yang Yugong had once joined forces with a demon cultivator who claimed to have received the great underworld patriarch's teachings. Later, that person was killed by Taoist Zhang, and his disciples fled in all directions under the pursuit of the Green Jade Palace. I thought that this person might be useful, so I tried to find a few people. This information was obtained from them. It was said that this sect was originally hidden in the Leaf Sea Sky, so this information should be reliable. Liang Jinglong's eyes lit up. He actually did not care much about the cave abode. He believed that other than disciples of the same lineage, it would be difficult for outsiders to enter such a place. However, he could use this matter to stir up conflict between the demon cultivators of the leaf sea sky and the cultivators of the other worlds. He thought for a while and ordered, "Spread this information. There is no need to say what is hidden there. Just say what you just now said." The young cultivator said, "I will go now, but Peng Xinhu is watching. It is very likely that he will know that this matter was done by us." Liang Jinglong smiled and said, "I want him to know that if he dares to come and see me, I will be more than happy to see him." A few days later, within Xianhong Sky, He Xianyin was flipping through a book in the cave abode. Since he had reached the enlightenment realm, he didn't need to cultivate hard every day. As time went on, his spiritual power would continue to grow, which was why he focused on some secret techniques that he had never touched before. There was a flash of light outside the hall and a few voices could be heard. Then, the hall door opened and a trusted disciple walked in. He bowed and said, "Master, there's a talisman letter from Green Jade Palace." He Xianyin immediately put down the book and opened it. He was a little surprised, taking in a deep breath and asking, "What happened in Green Jade Palace recently?" The disciple said, "I heard from the Golden Hall elder that a few important guests came. I don't know who they are." He Xianyin thought for a moment and said, "Help me make a trip to the Cloud Continent. I will try to report it to Zhang Shangzhen. However, I don't know whether or not he will reply." The disciple bowed and said, "Disciple will go now." Within Crimson Continent, Zhang Yan's sleeves hung down as he sat by himself in this crimson-red expanse of the world. Suddenly, his gaze flashed, and he withdrew his consciousness from the damaged jade before falling into deep thought. He'd really encountered many obstructions during his deductions this time. However, just like how everything in the world had yin and yang, if he grasped it well, then he would be able to obtain even more benefits from it. The art of internal refinement was extremely taxing on one's spirit. When a Taoist cultivator had cultivated the art of internal refinement for a period of time, he would have to stop. The results of his spirit would be reflected in the real world and the Dharmakaya would be strengthened. His chi of vitality would be more abundant and his spirit would be stronger. However, he noticed that based on such a situation, if each time they passed an obstacle, the cultivator would have a chance to strengthen their Dharma body. Then, the more obstacles they passed, the more benefits they would get. This wasn't like what Fu Qingming thought, where cultivators only walked the right path and tried their best to avoid the side paths. From this point, if a cultivator wanted to have extraordinary achievements and even surpass those in the past, when they faced obstacles, not only could they not avoid them, but they had to take the initiative to charge through them. Actually, the risks they had to take weren't small at all. In fact, it was even more than before. That was because once they took the wrong path, there was no way to turn back. Not only that, but with such cultivation, even if you didn't make any mistakes in each step, to break through those obstacles, you would have to spend more time. If he didn't have the broken jade, even if he noticed this, he wouldn't have enough time to do it. 1,000 years wouldn't be enough. From Fu Qingming's memories, when he was cultivating, he avoided many obstacles and only walked the right path, so he didn't know about the changes here. However, there was another possibility. It was very likely that this powerful senior knew about this matter, but was afraid that he would be greedy for the benefits here and delay his cultivation. Therefore, he deliberately erased this knowledge and concealed it, and repeatedly told him that he must walk on the right path and not deviate from the right path. Zhang Yan thought about it and felt that the latter possibility was more likely. Fu Qingming might have good intentions, but at the same time, he also had his own interests in mind. From this person's point of view, he only hoped that he could enter the true Yang realm within 1,000 years, so that he could protect him. As for how far he could go after entering this realm, and whether his achievements were high or low, it was not within his consideration. If this cultivation method was arranged according to how high and low it was, then the path that this almighty senior wanted him to walk was at most a lower one. And from his own point of view, this path was obviously not appropriate, and it was very likely that the advantages that he had accumulated before would be lost. He thought to himself, the path to true yang can be said to be mysterious and unpredictable. It should be known that this is just the beginning, who knows what I will encounter later. Since Palace Master Fu could hide something, he could hide even more. This memory can only be used as a reference, and I need to really deduce there myself in order to have a deeper understanding and understanding. After thinking about this, he had a clear judgment in his heart, and decided to completely disregard what Fu Qingming said, and walk according to his own thoughts. With this thought in mind, there was a strange feeling in his heart, as if he had removed a burden from his body. His mind became incomparably smooth, and the flow of qi intent was also more lively than before. He immediately understood that although this almighty senior's memory was also helpful to him, at the same time, it also created some kind of restriction. Now that he had jumped out of it, it was equivalent to breaking off the shackles, and returning his Tao heart to its original state. He faintly smiled and sank his consciousness into the broken jade, continuing to deduce the next step. Chapter 16-17. Unknowingly, 3 years had passed in a hurry. Elder Peng had always avoided Liang Jinglong. Even if Liang Jinglong made some small moves, Elder Peng would endure it. He only ordered people to keep an eye on Liang Jinglong and did not stop him. At the same time, he seized the opportunity to send people to various places in the Yuhuan heavens. He hoped that all the cultivators in the various realms would rely on the good deeds method to survive. This way, even if the palace's power was depleted, the good deeds method would not be destroyed. On this day, Ao Shao came to visit the palace again. Due to Liang Jinglong, the two families had been in frequent contact for the past few years. After sitting down in the hall, he said, Elder Peng, there have been many cultivators coming to Yi Haitian recently. The reason is that they have come to our realm to look for a cave left behind by the great underworld patriarch. However, there is a restrictive formation outside the door and many people cannot enter. Instead, they say that it was purposely set up by the dragon residents. It is really laughable. I have already ordered people to investigate. This matter has something to do with Liang Jinglong. Elder Peng said in a low voice, I know about this. It is not an exaggeration to say that Liang Jinglong has evil intentions. However, Elder Min, who has gone to Bailing Heavens, has not sent back any news. Therefore, it is not the time to question him. I am afraid that you will have to bear with it for a while. Ao Shao shook his head and said, there's no need to rush. What can a small trick do to me? It's good that Elder Peng knows what to do. As long as we don't cause any trouble and maintain our deterrence towards the various realms, no one will dare to covet the treasures here, even if it's a divine item like the profound stone. Peng Changchang Daoren said, it has been 3 years and there is still no reply from Xian Hongtian. It seems that you will not be coming for the time being. During this time, I have thought of a way. Since you are here, I can discuss it with you. Ao Shao said, Elder Peng, please speak. Peng Changchang Daoren said, I wish to pass the method of avoiding the calamity to the Suyang Heavenly Lord and explain the cause and effect of this to him. Ao Shao immediately understood what he meant. According to the contract with the spirit combining heavenly shuttle, if the Green Jade Palace had any manpower, they would have to contribute. However, the rest of the heavenly worlds would have to volunteer. If the Suyang Heaven Lord was willing to stay after obtaining the incantation and join forces with the Green Jade Palace, even if the 4 tribulation elders of the secret palace left, he and the Heaven Lord would still be able to suppress the other forces. Although it would be a little difficult, they would be able to maintain the situation. However, this was actually a risk. The Green Jade Palace was unable to sign a contract with the Heavenly Lord Qingtian. If they were to do so, they would be going against the Heavenly Lord Qingtian. This was not allowed by the contract between the two clans. Hence, everything could only be decided by the Green Jade Palace. If the Heavenly Lord Qingtian still did not reject the benefits offered by Liang Jinglong after obtaining the secret, the Green Jade Palace would not be able to stop him. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh, this is a dangerous move. Elder Peng's voice was firm. Although it is a dangerous move, it is worth it. The Suyang Heaven Lord has always been indifferent. Aside from cultivating, he doesn't even care about the inner realm. The chance of him going to another world is very small. Ao Shao asked, what if the Heavenly Lord Qingtian does not act according to fellow Taoists' plan? I'm not saying that fellow Taoists' plan is inappropriate, but we need to consider a way out. Otherwise, if the situation changes, we won't be able to deal with it. Elder Peng fell silent for a while. Then, he said, I have one last method. I don't want to use it unless it is absolutely necessary. Ao Shao nodded. Since Elder Peng had a way, he didn't pursue the matter any further. He asked, can I help you with this? Elder Peng Daoren said, there is no need. Fellow Taoist Ao, your actions will attract unwanted attention. I will arrange for someone to go. Once this is done, I will invite Liang Jinglong over to take a look at the name list. Ao Shao nodded and said, I believe we will soon have an answer to this person's background. After the two of them had come to an agreement, Elder Peng did not delay any further. He immediately sent the Taoist attendant to Suyang Heaven to discuss the pros and cons of this matter with the Heavenly Lord Qingtian. At the same time, he also sent the tribulation-avoiding technique to Heavenly Lord Qingtian. As for what would happen next and what the Heavenly Lord Qingtian would choose, it was not something he could control. After a whole month, the Taoist attendant had just now returned from Suyang Heaven. Elder Peng saw that he had returned and asked a few questions. Then, he made a decision and said in a deep voice, I will bring my talisman edict to invite Liang Jinglong over. The Taoist attendant was already prepared for this and immediately agreed. Not long after, Liang Jinglong received this news. He couldn't help but feel surprised. He originally thought that Elder Peng would delay for another few decades, but he didn't expect Elder Peng to make a decision so quickly. After thinking about it for a bit, he gave the young cultivator some instructions and left for the palace by himself. Elder Peng had been waiting in the palace. When he saw Liang Jinglong, they exchanged greetings and invited him to take a seat. Then, he handed over a jade talisman and said, this is the name list that I have prepared. Please take a look, Brother Liang. Liang Jinglong took the name list and saw the names of 5 enlightenment cultivators. Other than the 3 elders of the Green Jade Palace, the other 2 were Great Realm Heavenly Lords. They were Ao Shao, the Heavenly Lord of Suyang Heaven, and Cheng Li, the Heavenly Lord of Suyang Heaven. He chuckled, stood up, and cupped his fists. He said, I thank you on behalf of the Heavenly Lords of Bingling Heaven that you have kept your promise. Elder Peng expressionlessly said, according to the agreement, the elders of the Green Jade Palace can follow you. However, the remaining 2 are not from the Green Jade Palace. It all depends on whether Brother Zhen can convince them. Liang Jinglong smiled and waved his sleeve to put away the jade talisman. Then, he said, Elder Peng, you need not worry about this. Since I am here, I have my own ways. Elder Peng slowly said, then I will wait and see. I still have some matters to attend to, so I will not keep you any longer. Liang Jinglong laughed, bid farewell, and left the main hall. Ao Shao turned around and looked in the direction that Liang Jinglong had left. He said, there is indeed something wrong with this person. What does Elder Peng plan to do? Elder Peng sneered. If I touch him now, the person behind him will definitely come up with other tricks. Let's let him go for now. The longer we delay, the more advantageous it will be for us. After Liang Jinglong returned to the pavilion, the young cultivator came up to him and asked, Senior brother, how was it? However, he did not look too good. He squinted his eyes and said, I am afraid that I have exposed myself and Peng Xinhu has noticed something. The young cultivator was shocked. He asked, why do you say that, senior brother? Liang Jinglong said, the reason why Peng Xinhu tolerated you moving around was because he didn't want to meet me so soon. Now that he has given me the name list, he should at least give me a warning, but he didn't say a word about it. This is extremely abnormal. The young cultivator was stunned. That's all. He hesitated for a moment and asked, could it be that senior brother is overthinking things? Liang Jinglong closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He said, I would rather it be me overthinking things. However, I am feeling impatient. Something must have changed. The young cultivator still did not believe him. He said, according to senior brother, why did Peng Xinhu not capture you just now in the hall? Why did he let you go? Liang Jinglong sneered, he's only trying to slow me down, but it won't be long before he realizes this. Let's hurry up and leave this place. If we're late, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave. The young cultivator thought about it and nodded his head. He also understood. To be safe, it was best to leave this place first. Even if his senior brother guessed wrongly, they could still return. Liang Jinglong knew that he could not panic at this moment. He called Hansu and her daughter and calmly walked out of the building. He then boarded the carriage and passed through the 10,000 space ring. Just as the group of them left, a spiritual light shot over. It instantly shone on the 10,000 space ring and cut off all paths. Soon after, a cultivator came riding on the light and asked anxiously in the sky, did that Liang Shangzhen arrive here just now? The cultivator guarding the ring replied, he just left not long ago. The cultivator stomped his feet in annoyance. He immediately wrote a letter and sent it back in the direction of the cloud continent. Not long later, Elder Peng received the report. After he read the letter, he sighed. I was careless. The deacon said, Elder, there is still a chance. As long as you tell the Edict Golden Hall to pay attention, the moment this person arrives, immediately close the 10,000 space ring and order the World Lord to try to delay him, then there is still hope of keeping him here. Elder Peng shook his head. It is too late. Since this person sensed that something was wrong, how would he go elsewhere? Once he exited the cloud continent formation, he would probably have escaped to outer space. As expected, the moment Liang Jinglong went over to the 10,000 space ring, he sensed that there were changes in the surroundings. He immediately broke through the void and escaped from the remaining space. He sat on the jade mattress, his face dark and sunken. Until now, he still couldn't figure out what the problem was. The young cultivator said uneasily, Senior brother, what should we do now? We haven't done anything, and if we just go back like this, the ruler will definitely punish us. Liang Jinglong thought about it and said, there is still a chance to turn this around. You and I swore that if we slack off, we will lose our lives. However, we didn't take the oath, which means that it wasn't that we didn't try our best. There is another reason why we lost this chance. Next, we can only attack the Yuhuan heavens. If we are willing to be the vanguard, then maybe the ruler will let us make up for our mistakes. The young cultivator smiled bitterly. This time, Chu Shangzhen and the others are probably going to be too proud. Liang Jinglong scoffed. There were originally two factions who had different opinions on how to destroy the karma points in the Ling Tian heavens. He wanted to try to cause chaos in the Yuhuan heavens before attacking. That way, they would be able to get half the results with twice the effort. The other elder, Chu Shangzhen, felt that the effect would be too slow. If it didn't work, it would delay time and give Green Jade Palace a chance to gain a foothold. In the end, the higher-ups accepted his suggestion. If it didn't work this time, he could imagine how they would look down on him. However, he couldn't care less. After he returned, it would be good enough if he could keep his life. He turned his head and looked at Han Su. He softened his tone and said, this time, I have let you down. Not only did I not succeed, I even made you unable to reincarnate in the Yuhuan heavens. Don't blame me. Han Su shook her head. This is not my husband's fault. Furthermore, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even know where I would be now. Why would I blame you? Liang Jinglong said, although the Ling Tian heavens is under the ruler's control, there are still many living creatures. If I can pass this time, I will find a suitable place for you to reincarnate. Han Su lowered her head and said, I will do as my husband says. However, no one noticed that as she spoke, a gloomy aura flashed across her eyes. Chapter 16-18. Liang Jinglong left the Yuhuan heavens and hurried back through the void primordial sea. After 3 years, he finally returned to Binling heavens. Unlike the Yuhuan heavens, this place didn't have the 10,000 empty ring. Therefore, it took him another 10 years to enter the realm just now. As soon as they arrived in this world, all they saw was a dusky purple color. There was no sun, moon, or stars at all. Looking at it was extremely depressing and nauseating. Although this was not the first time Han Xiaorua had seen such a scene, she still felt very uncomfortable. She couldn't help but knit her brows and raise her hand to cover her chest. Liang Jinglong saw this and comforted her, "Daughter, I was in a hurry last time and didn't have time to perform a ritual for you. If I can pass this time, I will personally perform the ritual for you. Not only will you not be affected by the divine qi, but you will also benefit greatly from it." Han Xiaoying said, "I know that you have important matters to attend to. Don't worry about me. It's fine even if you have to wait a little longer." Liang Jinglong's expression was very gratified. Although he had many descendants, they were left behind before he entered Dao. They were already very far apart and were not as close as Han Xiaoying. Moreover, this daughter of his had great potential and he really wanted to nurture her. After flying for a day, they finally descended before a completely black serene hall. This hall seemed to be constructed with flowing air, and it looked like splashed ink that drifted around and merged with the surrounding scenery. As they stood here, the entire world seemed to only be left with black and white, and it was ghastly and empty without the slightest bit of vitality. Liang Jinglong led everyone down from the carriage. He said to Han Su, "Now that you have lost your Dharmakaya, you can't withstand the Lord's qi. It's better for you to wait outside." Han Su said, "I will wait here for my husband." She was full of worry. If Liang Jinglong could escape this time, then she and her daughters still had some hope. If they were punished by the Lord he mentioned, then the outcome would not be good. After Liang Jinglong gave his instructions, he called the young cultivator over and walked into the hall. However, when he stepped into the place where the qi flowed, he suddenly felt that his magic power was suppressed and it was extremely difficult to use. They had long since become accustomed to this. They walked along a cliff and after 100 breaths, they arrived in front of the main hall. The two knelt down and kowtowed. Liang Jinglong said, "Disciples Liang Jinglong and Guan Tuanzhong have returned from Yuhuan. Please pay your respects to the Lord." A 4 or 5-year-old child came out of the hall and said, "Liang Jinglong, the Lord asks if you have done what he asked you to do." Liang Jinglong hurriedly replied, reporting to Lord, "This disciple is incompetent and failed." As he spoke, he kowtowed again. "Lord, please punish me." After a while, the boy spoke again, "The Lord said that you did not take the oath, and that it was not you. Now I ask you for the details, and you must tell me the truth." Liang Jinglong's face was full of gratitude, and he immediately explained what Yuhuan had experienced in the all heavens. But after he finished, there was no reply for a long time. The two waited anxiously for a long time. Finally, they heard the child say, "The Lord wants the two of you to talk in the hall." Liang Jinglong acknowledged and hurriedly got up. He walked into the hall with the young cultivator. There were no pillars in the hall. It was empty and the ceiling couldn't be seen. The two walls were full of stone carvings. The people in the carvings were walking back and forth. There were a few people sitting high up in the carvings. When they saw the two enter, they all showed looks of disdain. On the jade platform opposite them, there was a tall stone statue. It was roughly carved and looked like a human or a bird. It was surrounded by an ink-colored aura, giving off the feeling that it was alive. When the two saw it, they hurriedly knelt down and said, "Greetings to the Lord." The stone statue said in a booming voice, "Elder Chu, what do you think about this?" One of the people on the carvings turned around and bowed to the stone statue. He said respectfully, "Lord, I think that the problem lies in the name list. That group of people in the past had a secret agreement with the Green Jade Palace that we don't know about. I destroyed them and didn't leave anything behind. I don't think there's any way to verify it." At this point, he raised his voice a bit and his tone became a bit more intense. "My lord, this one has already said that Elder Liang's method isn't advisable because there are too many unforeseeable matters and it is extremely easy for one's actions to be exposed. Right now, this is proof. The stone statue said, Elder Chu, it's my fault. Elder Chu said fearfully, I don't dare. I didn't mean that. It's just that Elder Liang thought that he had a deep understanding of Yu Huan's heavens and misled the Lord. The stone statue said, since we can't destroy this person from the inside, we'll use your method. Liang Jinglong, do you know how powerful Yu Huan is now? Liang Jinglong bowed and said, Lord, I've already investigated. Yu Huan had a great battle and several heaven masters died. Their strength isn't great, but it's not as great as before. The disciples of the Green Jade Palace's secret hall can't see the exact situation, but I've found out that there are still 2 fourth tribulation cultivators. The stone statue said, Elder Chu, are you confident? Elder Chu replied loudly, Lord, I dare to swear that if I don't destroy this world, my soul will be destroyed. The stone statue said, how long will it take? Elder Chu was very cautious and replied carefully, although Elder Liang and I are both fourth tribulation cultivators, there are still elders of the secret hall in Green Jade Palace. We can't fight them head-on, so we have to start from other worlds and attack them one by one. It'll take at least 700 to 800 years, or at least a few thousand years. Although he had been clamoring for a forceful attack, the Bailing Spirit Sky didn't have the capability to do so. He could only attack from the corners and gradually nibble away at them, which might take a long time. It was also because of this that the secret hall approved of Elder Liang's strategy. The stone statue said, it's going to take a long time. Elder Chu Daoren said, I have another plan. If it's possible, we can join forces with that evil lord. That way, we'll have a better chance of winning and it'll take less time. At this moment, Liang Jinglong raised his head and said, Lord, that evil lord isn't reliable. Back then, we decided to take one world each, but now that hundreds of thousands of years have passed, Lord has completely taken over the Bailing Spirit Sky, but there's still no progress on the evil lord's side. I'm afraid he's not serious about it. The stone statue said, that's not the case. The previous internal strife in the Yu Huan heavens was caused by him. Although I don't remember many things, the method to destroy the merit points is our obsession. He will do his best. I'll discuss this with him. Elder Chu, I'll leave it to you to make arrangements for the attack on the Yu Huan heavens. You're free to allocate the resources you need. Elder Chu acknowledged the order loudly. The stone statue continued, Liang Zhanglao, you escaped and came back. I should have punished you, but this time it was not your fault, and now I am in need of manpower, I will allow you to redeem yourself. You and your martial brother Chenguan Tunzhong, you will be under Chu Zhanglao's command. If anything happens to you, I will allow you to report to me. Liang Jinglong hurriedly bowed and said, I'm very grateful for Lord's benevolence. The stone statue said, that's all. Don't disappoint me this time. With that, the voice faded and the ink-colored mass of air above the stone statue slowly dissipated. Elder Chu knew that the exalted lord had left. With a shake of his body, he came down from the wall and walked to Liang Jinglong. With a stern expression, he said, Elder Liang, attacking Yu Huan is not a small matter. Let's put aside the grudges between us for now. You've just returned, so you should be more familiar with the situation than I am. Let's discuss a general plan later. Liang Jinglong was lucky to escape, so he kept a low profile. He said, that's what I should do. Elder Chu, can you give me some time? I still have some matters to attend to here. I'll visit you later. Elder Chu frowned and said, don't make me wait too long. With that said, his body blurred and turned into a dark cloud light. He soared into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The young cultivator watched him leave. He came up and asked, Senior Martial Brother, are we really going to listen to him? Liang Jinglong said, that's all we can do for now. The young cultivator said, Chu Weigong still needs us now, so he's being so polite to us. Once he understands what's going on, he might let us take the vanguard. At that time, our lives will be in his hands. Liang Jinglong said, just now, didn't you hear what Lord said? If I encounter any danger, I can report to Lord and ask Lord to make a decision. Moreover, Chu Weigong and I are the only ones in the Ling heavens. If I'm not here, he won't be able to do anything alone. There's no need to do that now. The young cultivator was relieved after hearing that. Seeing that everything was fine, the two of them left the hall. When they reached the outside, Han Su came up and asked, "Husband, how is it?" Liang Jinglong said, "The matter has been resolved, so we've passed this hurdle. However, I'll be accompanying Elder Chu to attack Yuhuan Heavens soon. Before that, I'll make arrangements for you and your daughter." Han Su hesitated for a moment. She touched her forehead and took out a crystal bead. She handed it over and said, "Husband, this is the other half of the secret technique." Liang Jinglong was a little surprised. When he asked for it previously, Han Su refused to hand it over no matter what. He didn't expect her to hand it over voluntarily now. He nodded and received it. He said in a deep voice, "I'll choose a place for you in 2 days and send you to reincarnate. I'll also take good care of our daughter." Han Su bowed and said, "Thank you for your trouble, husband." However, just as she bowed, a formless Yin wind emerged from her body. When it reached the sky, Peng Xiang appeared and looked down at the world beneath his feet. Originally, he had been guarding Xian Hengtian under Zhang Yan's orders. However, Guan Tuanzhong's spying outside had attracted his attention. He followed Guan Tuanzhong and did not expect to accidentally discover Xian Hengtian's plot. Actually, even an Enlightenment realm cultivator would find it difficult to detect him under the invasion of qi. However, Liang Jinglong and his senior brother both had an obscure qi that he did not dare to touch. He was afraid that if he intruded, he would alert the mastermind. Therefore, he chose to attach himself to Han Su and her daughter and successfully arrived here with them. Over the past few days, he had more or less figured out Xian Hengtian's motive. He thought to himself, "These people want to destroy the method of good deeds. This is not tolerated by Shangzhen. I'll first investigate the situation in this world. When there's a chance, I'll try to inform Green Jade Palace so that they'll be on guard." After making up his mind, his body suddenly dispersed and turned into gusts of Yin wind that flew in all directions. Chapter 16-19. On the Green Jade Palace's side, Elder Peng had guessed that Bailing Heaven would attack sooner or later after Liang Jinglong escaped, so he made preparations to deal with it. He summoned all the Heaven Lords and told them about what happened in Bailing Heaven. He also said that this place was likely to have been breached by the evil demons and that the Yuhuan Heavens would probably face a large-scale attack from another world. After Yang Yugong and the others were defeated, the other worlds were taken over by the Green Jade Palace's Secret Hall Elder. With Ao Shao's full support and the other Heaven Lord's subordinates, most of the Yuhuan Heavens' power could be mobilized. Although the Yuhuan Heavens might not be invincible, it was no longer as scattered as before. Liang Jinglong's judgment was right. As long as there was no conflict between the few worlds, it was almost impossible to destroy the karma method from the inside. After the Heaven Lords learned of this, they were also shocked. They had discussed for over 10 days in the Cloud Continent's Golden Hall and just now, they had come up with a plan to deal with it. It was agreed that when the Heaven Lords returned, they were to speed up the construction of the restriction formation. No matter which world was invaded by the enemy, those who received the talisman should immediately send help without any hesitation. Because they didn't know when the enemy would arrive, no one wanted anything to happen to their territory. Thus, after everyone finished their discussion, they hurried back to their worlds to make preparations. Elder Peng also returned to his cave dwelling. After sitting down, he asked, "Is there still no news of Elder Min?" The deacon replied, "Not yet." Elder Peng sighed. "I hope Elder Min can return safely." After learning that Bailing Heaven had fallen into the enemy's hands, he felt that the odds were against this elder. But even if he could return, he might have joined the evil demons like Liang Jinglong. Feng Lan said, "Elder Min has always been cautious and never does anything he isn't confident in. The evil demons are good at bewitching people, so to me, it's a good thing that there is no news." Elder Peng thought for a while and said, "You're right." At this moment, Guan Longzhao walked in and bowed. "Greetings, Elder." Elder Peng saw his strange expression and asked in a low voice, "Is something the matter?" Guan Longzhao said, "Elder will know as soon as he sees it." He turned sideways and called out, "Bring it up." A moment later, a rumbling sound could be heard as two 30-feet-tall strong men walked in with great difficulty, carrying a huge stone slab in. Guan Longzhao said, "This is a stone slab that we found in one of Zhu Zhutian's secret caves. There seems to be a demonic aura on it. Not only can I not store it in my cosmos sac, I can't use my transcendence energy to move it either. I could only summon a few great demons to move it over." Elder Peng sensed that there was indeed an evil aura lingering on it. Previously, he had found something similar in Yang Yogong's cave abode, so he was sure that the two of them were in cahoots with evil spirits. Guan Longzhao asked, "Elder, how should we deal with these two items?" Peng Zhang Daoren said, "Throw it into the heavenly furnace of Cloud Continent and try to destroy it." Who would have thought that just as he finished speaking, cracks would suddenly appear on the stone slab, emitting a crisp shattering sound. Not long after, the stone slab shattered into a pile of rubble, and finally turned into a cloud of black smoke, drifting away and disappearing. Feng Lan was shocked and said, "Did the evil spirit behind us sense it?" Elder Peng pondered for a moment and said, "That's not the case, but because this stone slab will definitely be damaged in the future, so it no longer exists in the present world." Feng Lan was startled and then laughed coldly. "That evil spirit is really capable, no wonder even someone like Yang Yugong was bewitched by it. Maybe there are still some that have not been exposed and are still hiding among us." The deacon Taoist said, "Elder Feng, don't worry. The technique that Zhang Shengzhen deduced last time is very effective against evil spirits. I have already seen it during the discussion in the hall, and none of the Sky Lords were infected, so we don't have to worry about it for now." Guan Longzhao said, "The evil spirit is good at changing, if it comes again, it will be even more difficult to deal with." Peng Zhang Daoren said, "Our Yuhuan All Heavens is not the same as before. If the evil spirit wants to come, let it come." As they spoke, another disciple came to report, "Elder, Suyang Sky Lord requests an audience." Elder Peng's expression changed and he said, "Quickly invite him in." Not long after, a green-robed Taoist entered, but his appearance was blurry. This time, in order to prevent the evil spirit from attacking, the All Heavens Sky Lords had only sent shadow clones here. Elder Peng bowed and said, "Greetings, Sky Lord Cheng." Cheng Li returned the greeting, then sat down at Elder Peng's invitation. Before Elder Peng could ask, Cheng Li said, "Elder Peng delivered the tribulation evasion technique to me some time ago. This is indeed something that I need, so I have no choice but to accept it. However, I don't like to take advantage of others for no reason, so I've come to sign a contract with your esteemed palace." Elder Peng was pleasantly surprised when he heard this. Ever since Yang Yogong's death, Cheng Li was the only person in the infinite realms whose cultivation was similar to Ao Shao's. After sending the tribulation avoidance technique, Elder Peng thought that it would be very difficult to win Cheng Li over. After all, he no longer had any bargaining chips in his hands, so he didn't expect Cheng Li to take the initiative to sign a contract. Elder Peng sighed and said, "Sky Lord Cheng, I thank you on behalf of Master Gong." Cheng Li said calmly, "Elder Peng, you don't have to say that. If I don't do this, I may not have a good ending in the future. This is just to protect myself. The evil spirit can come at any time, so I need to return as soon as possible to make arrangements. Elder Peng, you don't have to be so courteous with me. Take out the contract, and we can sign it as soon as possible." Peng Zhang Daoren agreed and immediately ordered someone to take out the contract. Cheng Li didn't hesitate in the slightest and immediately injected his own aura into the contract. When the contract disintegrated into a streak of light, Cheng Li picked up his copy and stood up. After bidding farewell, he transformed into a streak of light and left. Elder Peng's expression relaxed a little. He finally felt relieved. Cheng Li had always been a loner, and Elder Peng was worried that Cheng Li would be targeted by the evil spirit. This was not impossible. Even Yang Yugong had been roped in, so it was clear that the evil spirit was very powerful. Elder Peng had wanted to ask Ao Xiao to pay a visit to the Suyang heaven, but now he didn't have to worry about this anymore. In the following days, the heavenly lords of the various worlds stepped up their preparations for battle. The atmosphere of the vast heavens was filled with an atmosphere of impending war. But what was surprising was that the great enemy still did not arrive. This wait lasted for an entire 30 years. To the mighty cultivators, a mere few decades was not a long time. However, the people of the various realms didn't relax because of this. Instead, they were even more vigilant. The later the evil spirit arrived, the more ferocious it would be. However, at this time, the Green Jade Palace unexpectedly received a talisman. Not only did it clearly explain the general strength of the Bailing Spirit Heaven, it also revealed the date of their attack. When Elder Peng received the talisman, he immediately realized the value of this information. He asked, "Where is the person who sent this?" The Taoist in charge replied, "I've asked around. I only know that this was sent by a strange wind, but I don't know who did it. If it wasn't for the fact that the restrictions on it are extremely profound, the person below wouldn't have sent it here." Elder Peng thought for a moment and said, "Summon Feng Lan and Guan Longzhao." Soon, Feng Lan and Guan Longzhao arrived. Elder Peng showed the talisman to the two of them and asked, "What do you two think?" Feng Lan looked at it in disbelief and asked, "Could this have been sent by Elder Min?" Elder Peng shook his head and said, "No. This was sent by Elder Min, so there must be a seal of authority. It wouldn't be this random." Guan Longzhao said, "Then could it be someone from the Bailing Spirit Heaven who refused to submit to the demons?" Elder Peng Daoran said, "It doesn't seem like it. This talisman was clearly given to me, which means that it's someone familiar with our world." Feng Lan said, "Then who could it be? Could it be that Liang Jinglong and the others are trying to mislead us?" Elder Peng thought for a moment and said, "There's no need for them to do this. Forget it, let's not look into their origins for now. If this talisman is real, then it seems that the demon's subordinates are about to move out from the Bailing Spirit Heaven." At this point, he emphasized, "Within 10 years, we will be facing a battle." In the Kuan residence, a clear light flashed and Zhang Yan appeared. He had encountered some problems during his repeated deductions with the remnant jade. Although he could solve them in the end, he always felt that there were some areas that he had overlooked. As he was thinking of a solution, he suddenly had a strong feeling that there might be something he wanted in the ancestral master's cave abode, so he returned here. From his previous experience, it was difficult to see the secret techniques hidden in the cave abode as long as they were beyond his knowledge or cultivation level. However, after dozens of years of deductions, he had roughly practiced the true yang cultivation technique in advance, so his understanding of the path of Tao and the upper realm could not be compared to before. He gazed at the sky, and not long after, a floating island appeared in his eyes. There was a high peak on top of it, and it was the place he had returned to before. With a thought, he felt the scene before his eyes flash, and he was already standing in front of a stone door. With a light wave of his sleeve, the door was pushed open with a rumble. He walked into the courtyard, his eyes sweeping around. The last time he came to this place, there were only a few jade scrolls on the wall. But now, when he looked again, he saw many jade scrolls placed on the wall. It was as if someone had been here before. With a faint smile on his face, he walked over to one of the caves and picked up a jade scroll. He opened it and couldn't help but nod. Just as he had expected, all of the secret manuals here were related to the cultivation of true yang cultivation. He compared these with the memories that Fu Qingming had imparted to him. He realized that what was recorded here was even more detailed and complete. However, it only involved how to get past the obstacles on the path of Tao. There were no follow-up techniques. Anything that exceeded his own understanding did not exist. He had no hope of obtaining the secret technique that would allow him to reach the heavens in a single step. After carefully looking through it, he put the jade slip back. However, the moment it left his hand, it suddenly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. It was impossible to tell whether what he was looking at just now was a shadow of the past or a vision of the future. He shook his head and did not look into it. He turned around and walked to another place, took out another jade slip, and read it with concentration. He'd stayed here for half a year, and he'd read through all the secret manuals and comprehended them thoroughly. His understanding of his future path towards the Tao had become even clearer. He raised his head and gazed at the empty cave before him, and he felt that it was time for him to return and continue cultivating. Thus, a thought arose in his heart, and he instantly returned to the Crimson Continent. Chapter 1620. Fu Qingming was sitting in the netherworld. Suddenly, his expression changed. He had intercepted a strand of divine will that was drifting in the primordial sea. After taking a look at it, he discovered that it was left behind by the Heaven Lord of the Twin Spirit Heaven. It was to inform him that the Twin Spirit Heaven had been breached by the evil fiends. He shook his head and sighed, "It's too late." The Heaven Lord of the Twin Spirit Heaven was connected to him by karma. Logically speaking, he should have sensed it before it was destroyed. If he could find a way to stop it, he might have been able to change the future. However, the evil fiend was the evil chi left behind by his enemy, and he could not tolerate it. Not only did it disrupt his senses, even the Spirit Lord's divine will could not escape in time. It was only after a long time that it entered his senses. After he was defeated and died, he only left behind an incarnation of his essence. However, that evil aura had been pestering him for 1,000,000 years. However, unlike him, the evil aura didn't have a consciousness of its own in the beginning. However, he knew that if this evil aura didn't vanish, then it would eventually form a clone. At that time, it would be able to find out where it came from and understand the cause and effect of everything that had happened. Although the evil chi might not be able to defeat him, it would definitely expose its location. As a result, he secretly used some methods to prevent such a thing from happening. He split the evil chi into 2 independent clumps of chi. That way, no matter which clone appeared, it would not be able to fight him. In order to prevent the 2 clumps from merging again, he kept one half of the evil chi in the Yuhuan heavens, while the other half was shared by the Twin Spirit Heaven. The reason why he had been sending forces to the Twin Spirit Heaven for so long was to keep the evil chi in the 2 battlefields, so that they would never merge again. However, now that the Twin Spirit Heaven had been breached, the 2 clumps of evil chi would meet sooner or later due to their obsession. It was very likely that they would merge again. This process would take a few hundred years, or even 1,000 years. Right now, all of his hopes were tied to Zhang Yan. If Zhang Yan was able to enter the true Yang stage at that time, then he would be able to turn the situation around, but if not, then his 1,000,000 years of planning would come to nothing. He silently probed for a moment. Now that dozens of years had passed, the method he added to the profound stone still hadn't moved. He couldn't help but ponder, it hasn't started yet. Is he waiting for something, or is he hiding somewhere that even I can't detect? He guessed that Zhang Yan might have landed in a cave left behind by the great underworld patriarch to cultivate, but it might be able to block his senses, but it might not be able to block the evil chi. It should be known that the shackles that blocked the true Yang were left behind by his opponent, and his real body was still there. The size of the Whaley was not something that his current body could compare to. Unless there was someone more powerful than him, there was no way he could avoid it. Just as he was pondering, he sensed something and looked in a direction. Is he here? In the Yuhuan heavens, outside the heaven pass of Long He, a magic ship appeared. Elder Chu and Liang Jinglong were standing on the ship with their disciples. Liang Jinglong sensed for a moment before saying, "The Heaven Lord of Long He Heaven is one of the weakest in the all heavens. He's only a first tribulation cultivator, and he hasn't been here for long." When Yang Yugong led the cultivators to attack the Green Jade Palace, he didn't try to recruit this person, and he was unwilling to join the Green Jade Palace, so he just watched from the sidelines. Later on, when the Green Jade Palace won, he was forced to join them. He doesn't have any friendship with the Heaven Lords of the All Heavens, so he has a higher chance of winning by attacking this world first. Chu Changchang Daoren said, "Elder Liang has briefly mentioned this before, and there's no doubt that it makes sense. However, in my opinion, this world has the least restrictive arrays in the all heavens, so this reason alone is enough." He called out and asked, "Where's Elder Gong?" A clear light flashed, and a Daoran appeared behind them. Judging from his aura, he was at least at the second tribulation of perception. He said, "Disciple is here." Chu Changcheng Daoran said, "Bring people to attack this world. Don't worry about how many cultivators you kill. Do your best to build the God Pass. If you can't win, don't die for nothing. Come back as soon as possible." That Daoran bowed and said, "Disciple obeys." After this person walked out of the palace, he immediately led more than 10 disciples out of the spiritual boat and dashed toward the border gate. With the arrival of this person, a wave of aura descended from Longha heaven. Heavenly Lord Fan Shu was in front of the hall at this moment, and he immediately sensed it. His expression darkened, and he looked toward the sky. The disciples immediately fell silent, and many of them looked uneasy. The eldest disciple, Ying Xian, stood up and said, "Master, this." Fan Shu stretched out his hand to stop him from continuing, and he said in a low voice, "According to the time, it should be about time. But I never imagined that the first stop would be directed at me, Longha heaven. Do they think I'm easy to bully?" He pinched his fingers and calculated for a moment, then said, "This person will enter the world for at least 5 years. Ying Xian, bring some people to make arrangements, and do as we discussed earlier." Ying Xian responded loudly and left to carry out the order. Fan Shu summoned another trusted disciple and said, "Go to Green Splendor Heaven and inform Elder Peng of this matter." Because he had only been a crossing enlightenment cultivator for a short period of time, he was considered a junior compared to the heavenly lords, so they didn't have much of a relationship. Although there was a contract stipulating that the heavenly realms had to help each other, he also understood that he would owe someone a favor if he went to ask for help. Instead of that, he might as well just leave the matter to Green Jade Palace. He believed that Elder Peng wouldn't sit by and watch, and would definitely arrange for reinforcements. After all, he had long known that people from Longling Heaven were coming, and had already made preparations beforehand. Now that he had made arrangements in an orderly manner, the panicked emotions of the disciples quickly calmed down. Everyone did their best to arrange the matters in their hands, and the entire heavenly realms were soon ready for battle. However, after a few days, the reinforcements from Green Jade Palace arrived. Because it was an attack from Longling Heaven, Elder Peng attached great importance to it, and directly sent an elder with the surname Yun, who had already reached the third tribulation of crossing enlightenment. From the aura that the newcomer revealed, this person was already enough to deal with. Of course, if this still couldn't be stopped, more reinforcements would be sent. 5 years after the arrival of the aura, a crack suddenly appeared in the sky, and a dozen or so powerful auras instantly tore through the world. After the elder Gong from Longling Heaven entered the world, he swept his gaze around and immediately ordered, "Split half of the people here to choose a realm to build a divine pass. The rest, follow me." Immediately, 6 cultivators responded. After a while, they chose a nearby mountain and landed on it. They took out many treasures from their sleeves and prepared to build a divine pass here. This item was similar to the 10,000 empty realm ring. Once it was built, it would allow people from the heavenly spirit realm to pass through it in an endless stream. Elder Gong led the remaining people towards where Fan Shu, the heavenly lord of Longha, was. Not long after, they arrived in front of a large city in the clouds. After sensing the surrounding formation, he said, "Let's go." In an instant, streaks of lightning condensed from magic power smashed onto the formation. Elder Gong was expressionless. He didn't think that they could take down this world with just the few people they had. Their real goal was to attract the attention of the cultivators in this world so that the divine pass could be built. On the other side, Elder Chu and the others were sitting inside the spirit boat. They didn't know what was going on inside. Before the divine pass was built, they couldn't even build a half-world, so they could only wait here patiently. About 10 days passed by their bodies, and with a rumble, the divine pass was smashed open. Elder Gong and the others came out, but they were in a sorry state. When they left, there were more than 10 people, but when they came, there were only 7 left. When the group returned to the spirit boat, Elder Gong came up and bowed. He said in shame, disciple is useless and couldn't build the divine pass. Elder Chu's expression didn't change, and he didn't seem to care. This attack was just a test, and he didn't expect anything to happen. He said, "Tell me about the situation in the inner world." Elder Gong Daoren nodded and roughly explained the situation. In the end, he said, disciple wanted to attack Fan Shu's palace with all his strength to buy time so that I could build the divine pass. However, an elder of Green Jade Palace came, and his cultivation level was at the Enlightenment 3 tribulations. Disciple was no match for him. After defending for a few days, I finally lost and had no choice but to escape. Liang Jinglong waved his hand and said, "All right, I understand. This time, it's not your fault. You can leave." Elder Gong felt as if he had been pardoned. He bowed deeply to the hall and left. Elder Chu looked over and said, "Elder Liang, you're more familiar with Yu Huan than I am. What do you think?" Liang Jinglong smiled playfully and said, "I have some ideas. If all the forces in the Yu Huan heavens were combined, they would be more powerful than me. However, as I expected, the heaven lords of all the realms are afraid that something might happen to their realms, so they don't dare to move easily. They can only rely on the people of Green Jade Palace to rescue them. However, according to my investigation, although the elders of the secret hall are very powerful, there aren't many of them. Many of them are already guarding a realm, so the number of people they can send out is even smaller. We can attack in all directions and disperse their forces. Then, we can use the talisman given by his lordship to break into one of the realms and seal the 10,000 empty realm ring." Although he said that the talisman could be used to travel into the void realm in an instant, it wasn't easy to make and there were very few of them. Currently, only he, Elder Chu, Guan Tuanzhong, and a few others had them. They could only be used at the most critical moment. There were several trusted disciples standing behind Elder Chu. One of them said regretfully, "It's a pity that his lordship didn't give us enough talismans. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble." Elder Chu said impatiently, "If his lordship has to do everything for him, what's the use of us? You don't have to say this anymore. Although his lordship has never sinned because of his words, it would be disrespectful to his lordship if word of this got out." Liang Jinglong just smiled lightly. Elder Chu pondered for a moment. Although he was conceited, he was still willing to listen to the right advice. "So," he said in a deep voice, "let's do as Elder Liang said." Chapter 1621. Peng Xiang continued to absorb the turbid spiritual vigor in the depths of the parallel spirit sky, slowly strengthening his demon body. The Genin demon could split into countless clones, and there was not much difference between the main body and the clones. Even if 99% of the Genin demon was killed, even if only a wisp of qi remained, as long as there was turbid qi or a cultivator's spirit to absorb, there was a chance for it to recover. To avoid being discovered when he entered the world, the wisp of qi he had attached to Han Su was actually not very strong. Fortunately, the turbid qi here was not gathered in one place like the Yu Huan heavens. It could still be found deep underground, so after he entered this place, he quickly recovered some of his strength. At this time, the rest of his clones were roaming the surface. This time, the cultivators of the parallel spirit sky attacked the Yu Huan heavens from afar. Chu and Liang had brought most of their combat strength with them, so only one mortal slush and 3 paradise heavens were left to guard this world. After repeated investigations, he confirmed that the cultivators of this world were talking about had also disappeared. This gave him a chance to infiltrate and plant the demonic poison everywhere. However, he did not dare to rashly enter the temporary imperial residence of the Lord. Not only that, every time he thought of going in to investigate, he would feel a great sense of danger, as if he had already been discovered. If he took another step in, he might be killed. Only by cutting off this thought in time would the feeling disappear. After knowing that the other party was not to be trifled with, he no longer wasted his energy. Instead, he turned to deal with the other cultivators. These ordinary cultivators could not escape his methods. As the demonic poison and qi spread more and more, over the past few decades, he had infected more than 80% of the cultivators in this world. If there was a need, he only needed a thought to completely destroy the foundation of the parallel spirit sky. If Yu Huan was defeated, there was no need to say anything. But if Chu and Liang were defeated, they would not be able to recover without tens of thousands of years of time. In the blink of an eye, another 15 years passed by in the Yuhuan heavens. In the stone-striking sky, Ao Xiao and Qing Li stood on a cloud raft. They looked at the majestic gate that seemed to be made of rainbow light with solemn expressions. Over the years, Bingling Heaven had launched attacks on 7 or 8 heaven realms. Although the Green Jade Palace had guessed their intentions, they had no choice but to save them. As a result, their manpower was scattered everywhere. 5 days ago, Chu and Liang had used the talismans to break into the striking stone sky, and had built this divine pass in just half a day. When the elders of Green Jade Palace rushed over, it was already too late to stop it. Moreover, they noticed that this object was just like the myriad sky ring, and it was impossible to destroy. Not only that, a few days ago, it was only 100 feet tall, yet it was now 3,000 feet tall. Moreover, it was still growing. Based on this speed, it wouldn't take long for it to reach 100,000 feet tall. Ao Xiao said, once this gate is built, heaven and earth can send as many people as they want. However, this generation should not be able to build too many of these gates, and the method of breaking into the heaven realm at any time should not be used casually. Otherwise, the various heaven realms would not have caused such a commotion. However, Qing Li thought of another problem, and said, looks like the people behind merging spirit sky aren't as simple as they seem. Not only do they not fear the suppression of karma points, but they're also able to set up something similar to the 10,000 empty ring. Ao Xiao said, indeed. However, with the palace master of Green Jade Palace around, that person will not dare to be too presumptuous. Otherwise, why would he bother with me here? Qing Li pondered for a moment, then nodded. Although Ao Xiao's words were very reasonable, there was a lingering feeling of unease in his heart. If he had to compare it, it felt like the sky above his head could collapse at any time. Ao Xiao said, we don't know when the cultivators of heaven realms will attack. It looks like we can only block this gate. Qing Li said, I'm just afraid that they will create a diversion again. Ao Xiao said, Elder Peng has already made appropriate arrangements. The two of us only need to watch over this place. After the news of stone striking sky being breached spread, Elder Peng had already increased his vigilance. The remaining 2 fourth tribulation cultivators in the secret palace were standing guard beside the ring at all times. If the people of heaven realms were to break into the realm again, they would rush out to reinforce them at any time. However, the two of them did not know that a half-realm had already been set up outside the divine gate. The cultivators who had split up to attack the realms had all gathered here. Elder Chu looked at the center of stone striking sky from the magic boat and said, Elder Liang, according to your plan, we didn't seal off the myriad sky ring last time. Let's see if we can surround and kill the cultivators of Green Jade Palace who have come to guard here. However, I'm afraid the fish you've caught this time is a little too big. We may not be able to take it. Liang Jinglong said, Elder Chu, how will we know if we don't try? If we can keep these 2 people here, it will be much easier for us to do things in the future. Elder Chu grunted in agreement. Then, with a sway of his body, he descended towards the divine gate below. He said, follow me. Liang Jinglong smiled and also flew down. This time, all the cultivators of Duju who had arrived also followed. At the same time, Ao Xiao and Qing Li, who were guarding the realm, were alerted. Ao Xiao's expression turned serious. He said, there are many people coming, and 2 of them are not weaker than us. Men, quickly send a message to the realm. Elder Chu was the first to rush out of the divine gate. He did not immediately launch an attack. Instead, he threw out a talisman. As soon as the talisman reached the outside, it turned into a spirit and shot out. It penetrated the layers of restrictive formations and landed on the myriad sky ring. With a flash, the ring disappeared into thin air. What? Ao Xiao and Qing Li were shocked when they saw this. They never expected the other party to have such a trick up their sleeves. If the realm gate did not exist, it would mean that their reinforcements had been cut off. They could only rely on the people of the realm to fight against the cultivators of heaven realms. But who would have thought that the enemy would be so capable? Moreover, they clearly had the chance to do so last time, but they had let it go. This meant that it was a trap for today. Ao Shao quickly understood the situation. Without reinforcements, it was impossible to defend this realm. Even if the elders of Green Jade Palace broke through the realm gate and arrived, it would take them at least a dozen years. They could not hold on for such a long time under the attacks of the cultivators of heaven realms. He transmitted his voice through the divine will. Heaven Lord Cheng, we can't do this. We can only leave this realm to these people. We will hold on for a while and let Heavenly Lord Stonebasher retreat with his people. Otherwise, we will lose our lives here. Cheng Li understood that this was the best choice. He said in a deep voice, "Let's do as Heaven Lord Ao said." After the two of them informed Heavenly Lord Stonebasher of this through the divine will, they retreated and charged toward the ray of light that shot out from the divine light. Elder Chu was originally at the front. When he saw Ao Shao coming over, he did not show any weakness and rushed over. In an instant, the two auras collided. Liang Jinglong followed closely behind. As soon as he entered the realm, he was targeted by Cheng Li. The two of them immediately attacked each other. After a short while, the cultivators from Heaven Realms Du Ju came out of the divine pass one by one. Ao Shao and Cheng Li were afraid that they would be surrounded and would not be able to escape, so they quickly broke through the void and fought as they moved. However, after 100 breaths, they sensed that Heavenly Lord Stonebasher had already escaped with his people. They did not delay any longer. With a flash, they entered the restriction formation where the myriad empty realm ring was. After buying some time, the two of them immediately broke through the void and escaped beyond the heavens. One of the Heaven Realms cultivators said with some regret, "It's a pity that we could not stop those two." Elder Chu Daoran said, "If a fourth tribulation cultivator really wants to leave, it will be very difficult to stop them." He did not expect the two of them to be so decisive and leave just like that. He had prepared a restriction technique on him, but he did not manage to use it in the end. He had wasted a great opportunity. Liang Jinglong said, "No matter what, this realm belongs to me now, and there are no casualties." Elder Chu turned his head toward the Imperial Decree Golden Palace. There was a flash of coldness in his eyes as he pointed and said, "Everyone, listen to my order. Break the restriction formation here and destroy the palace. Do not let a single tile remain." In the land of the dark, although Fu Qingming was here, he saw the whole process of the battle between the two sides. Once the Golden Hall of Imperial Decree in the stone-hitting heaven collapsed, it meant that the method of karma points could no longer be maintained here. However, once he appeared to repel the enemy, it was likely that he would be discovered by the enemy, so he could only silently watch from the outside. However, after watching for a moment, images flashed before his eyes. He saw an extremely blurry image of the future, and his expression became serious. It was the image of the Heaven Realms Du Ju fusing with the Heaven Realms Du Ju. This should not have happened yet, but it would happen soon. Both sides were eager to devour each other and had begun fighting, which was why he was able to sense it. Once the two auras fused, the person that came out would be even stronger than before. Even if that person wasn't as strong as him, it wouldn't be someone the inner realm cultivators could stop. Most importantly, the method he added to the Xian stone could delay the arrival of the evil aura for more than 1,000 years. However, as the two auras fused, the evil aura would become stronger and stronger. This process would be greatly shortened, perhaps by 700 to 800 years, 500 to 600 years, or even shorter. If Zhang Yan's cultivation place could really block the evil aura, then it would be fine. If it couldn't, then if he didn't use his cultivation method to break into the true Yang realm, then he would have no chance to come down. He thought, "I can't delay any longer. I need to try to warn him." With a thought, he tracked that strand of evil aura from the past to the future. However, after observing for a while, he lost track of Yukuan's Yingxiao. He thought, it looks like he indeed used the method left behind by the great underworld ancestor. With a thought, a streak of light came down and came in front of Big Kuan Yingxiao. He bowed and said, "Fellow Yingxiao, long time no see." Yingxiao was surprised and asked, "Palace Master Fu, why are you here?" Fu Qingming asked, "Are you here, fellow cultivator Zhang?" Yingxiao truthfully replied, "Zhang Shengzhen has been here, but I can't feel where he is." Fu Qingming could tell that Yingxiao wasn't hiding anything. After thinking for a bit, he solemnly said, "If you see fellow cultivator Zhang, please tell him that there is a change in the situation and he doesn't have much time left. I hope he can seize this opportunity and not delay for too long. Remember, remember." Yingxiao said, "If I see Zhang Shengzhen again, I'll tell him Palace Master Fu's words." Fu Qingming nodded and didn't say more. His shadow suddenly disappeared as if he had never been here.